Hey you all, welcome to Just a Shinobi. Today, we dive into an exciting what-if scenario. What if Puppet Master Naruto trained by Sasori? Part 2. Thanks for loving first part. If you enjoy this, hit subscribe for more thrilling content. Explore my other videos, share with friends, enjoy them too, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. It motivates me. Let's not waste any time. Jump into today's what if. Chapter 10. Vegito Nai. She stared. She stared and found she could not move. She was gaping at what stood before her. Naruto was there, but he was wearing armor. Armor she had never dreamed of seeing in her life. His chest was covered in a protective plate. His head sported a beetle head-shaped helmet complete with a stag beetle's horn. His back was protected by an oval-shaped shell, his legs were covered in attachments that not only looked like some sort of demonic beetle's legs, with 2 sharp toes instead of 5, but it also increased his height to more than a foot taller than she was, and she was 5'8". But what really grabbed the attention were the 6 extra arms that had spines curving backwards out of the elbows, and the 4 scorpion tails that jutted from a device at his tailbone and were arched over and ready to strike. Naruto looked down upon her with slight amusement as she finally got over her surprise. I do not know who you are, woman, but I knew you were coming as soon as you cut the strings off of 2 of my security puppets. And I also know you must be good to make it all the way to me. That or my traps need to be tuned up. The woman suppressed a look of surprise. He knew I was coming for that long. The room was suddenly filled with clicking noises and Naruto got closer to her. But now I have questions as to why you're here trying to kill me. And don't deny it because that is the only conceivable reason someone should be sneaking into my home at night. She was suddenly grabbed by the tail and lifted up to meet the gaze of Naruto. Naruto leaned closer and narrowed his eyes when he saw her headband. Kumo? A Kumo assassin. I'm going to enjoy draining the life out of you and the fools responsible for sending you. The young woman couldn't help but cringe a bit, but she understood his attitude. Suddenly one of the tails shot forward at blinding speeds, aiming to take off her head. She used every ounce of strength she had in her body to jerk herself out of the way. The tail's tip barely missed her head by millimeters. Damn, this guy wasn't playing. She wrenched herself from the tails and delivered a fierce kick to Naruto's chest at amazing speeds and watched in satisfaction as he slammed into the wall. I'm sorry Uzumaki-san, but I have to kill you now, she said. Naruto paid no attention to her words and positioned his katana. It was time for this fight to begin. The young woman charged with great speeds and slashed with her kunai. Clang. Naruto blocked with his sword and grit his teeth as she pressed forward. She was good. But not good enough. He struck with 3 fists and they connected. She was thrown away with great force and sent crashing through the wall very loudly. What the hell was that? Yelled Yuigao as she leapt out of her bed with a kunai drawn. She saw the security seals acting up and could hear the sounds of conflict. Naruto-kun. Niji, Hinata and Hanabi had also woken up and were running down one of the halls toward Naruto's room when the wall to the left suddenly exploded and Naruto came flying through with a grunt. Rubble flew everywhere. The 3 Hyugas widened their eyes when they saw Naruto's armor and gasped when a blonde Kumo Kunoichi leapt out of the hole and tried to punch Naruto in the face. Naruto intercepted her blow by grabbing her wrists with 2 hands, swinging her around 3 times, then releasing her into the wall at the right. She went right through it with a loud crash and grunt in pain. Naruto was right on her heels. Clang. His katana strike was blocked again by the Kumo Kunoichi's kunai. They both narrow their eyes and throw simultaneous punches. Bam. Naruto was thrown back out of the hole, while the Kumo nin was slammed into the empty bed, breaking it in half. Naruto-kun. What's going on? Yelled Yuigao as she arrived on the scene. Naruto growled and was tackled by the Kumo nin a second later. The 2 of them slammed right through floor and crashed into the room below. Hanabi's room. The Kumo nin rolled to avoid a tail strike that leapt back to avoid 3 more. The tails were striking at remarkable speeds, and she was dodging with the speed, reflexes and grace of a cat. The room was quickly decimated and filled with wooden shrapnel. Naruto capitalized on this and dashed forward once again trying to kill her with his sword. No. She yelled as she bent backwards and kicked the sword out of his hand. Naruto growled in annoyance and struck with another tail. She jumped to the side and the tail stabbed into the floor and when it was pulled back, it pulled up floorboards and sent wooden splinters all over. Woman, you are annoying, said Naruto as he dashed forward. She braced herself and was spear tackled by Naruto. Both of them crashed through the window and landed outside. Naruto-sama. Yelled Hanabi as she and the others followed close behind. They arrived just in time to see the Kumo Kunoichi land a punch to Naruto's face. Naruto grit his teeth and prepared to charge again. Naruto-kun. For a split second his attention shifted to Yuigao. That was all the Kumo Kunoichi needed. With great speed she dashed forward and dug her kunai into his abdomen. He widened his eyes and snapped his attention back to the Kumo Kunoichi. Naruto-kun. Uzumaki-san. Naruto. Naruto-sama. Were the cries of Yugao, Niji, Hinata and Hanabi respectively. Naruto widened his eyes and looked back at his opponent. He saw sadness in her eyes. I'm sorry Uzumaki-san. But I have no choice. Naruto coughed a bit of blood and smirked. Don't think so low of me woman. A second later 6 fists slammed into her abdomen and sent her into the air. 3 tails lashed out and wrapped around her waist, then slammed her painfully into the ground. He then raised the 6 artificial arms and said, goodbye. She widened her eyes as the arms split open and released a massive wave of senbon needles. Time seemed to slow down at that moment. She watched as the wave of needles came at her with enough force to rip through 4 inches of wood. She gathered her thoughts and reached within herself. This guy. He was strong. But so was she. Yes girl. Show this boy who he's dealing with. And with a nod she did. Naruto watched as the wave of senbon headed for his target with a look of satisfaction. But that look of satisfaction was suddenly gone when a wave of purplish-black chakra suddenly exploded off of the Kumo Kunoichi and threw the projectiles off in different directions. Naruto was overcome with killing intent and he could feel the tainted power rolling off of the young woman. What is this? He asked as the girl's eyes transformed into golden cat eyes and a flaming tail of chakra extended from her lower back. Instantly eyes all over Konoha snapped open. Naruto looked on in wonder as the chakra continued to swirl violently around her. Uzumaki-san, that armor of yours has become useless now. She vanished a second later. Bam. Ugh. She sunk her fist into Naruto's abdomen and sent him smashing through the home of several civilians. Debris was thrown all over the place and the said civilians were running out of their house in fear a couple of seconds later. Naruto skidded for a few more yards and just as he was recovering, another fist slammed into him and sent him into the air. Ugh. What is this? Such power. He looked down just in time to see the Catwoman flying up at him with a karate kick. Her foot slammed into his cheek and he was sent spinning away and through the roof of another home. He landed on his back and so was spared by the shell protecting it. Damn. This is no ordinary ninja. He stood up and brushed the debris off of his shoulders. Fine then. He said as he began to concentrate. All over Konoha people were running about in confusion. Half of the ninja population was rushing toward the slums of Konoha while the other half was trying to calm the panicking civilians. What the hell is going on? Yelled Sarutobi. I don't know. It appears to have originated from Uzumaki's home. But that wasn't the Kyuubi's power. Let's just get there. The Kumo Kunoichi came smashing through the roof just in time to see waves glow with seals and drop from Naruto's person. Naruto looked up with cold eyes and positioned his tails. Time to take it up a notch woman, he said. She hissed and vanished. Naruto positioned his tails at lightning fast speeds and intercepted her kick. She widened her eyes a bit at his smirk. A second later she had to dodge 2 fists but didn't see the third one as it extended and planted into her stomach and sent her through the wall and back outside. Naruto was on her before she had time to blink and delivered a fierce kick to her back that sent her up. She twisted in the air and met his uprising punches as they traded blows all the way back to the ground. As soon as they touched land they both vanished. Clang. Smash. Bam. As Sarutobi and numerous Jounin and Anbu arrived the scene they were met with these sounds, along with different parts of buildings and the street breaking apart. He could see the two as they traded blows at speeds that only high Chunin and higher could follow clearly. He saw Naruto's armor and the Kumo Kunoichi's chakra and widened his eyes. Everyone. Get the civilians out of this area. He commanded. He saw Naruto and the Kumo Kunoichi slam fists into each other's faces and in the process end up throwing each other off in different directions, resulting in more damaged property. He saw Yugao, Hinata, Hanabi and Niji watching with anxiety. Shit. What hell is going on? Naruto slammed into a water tower and went through, resulting in water being thrown all over the place. Water release water dragon. The water from the tower suddenly transformed into a large dragon and shot at the Kumo Kunoichi with great speeds. She avoided it and watched as the water slammed into the ground and transformed it into mud that went flying all over the place. She hissed when some of the water splashed onto her and dashed at the water tower with great speeds. You're good Uzumaki-san, she commented as she slammed into his tails again. Naruto grunted and fell to the ground with the Nico girl on top of him trying to stab him with her kunai. Naruto wrapped one of his tails around her and spun around. This is getting old woman. Half of Konoha is here and you're costing me sleep. I will end it now. He slammed her into the ground harshly and lashed out with 2 tails before she could react. Ack. The gathered crowd gasped as blood spurted up and splattered all over Naruto and his armor. He lifted the 2 tails and took the impaled form of his opponent with him. With one flick the young woman was thrown off of the tails and sent crashing in front of Sarutobi. Naruto looked up and wiped the blood off of his face and turned to face the crowd. They were looking with wide eyes for numerous reasons. There were murmurs of, "Look at his armor. He's a beast. Such a brutal way to kill someone." Naruto ignored the comments and looked back at his apartment complex. It was surprising how far away from the place they had traveled while fighting. "It'll take me weeks to repair all of that," he mumbled as he began to walk back. "Naruto-kun. What happened? Who was that?" asked Yugao. Naruto sighed and said, "Assassin. Someone hired her from Kumo." There were some gasps. "Come on. I'm done here and I need tea." He suddenly froze, as did Yugao and everyone else in the village, as an extremely powerful wave of chakra suddenly exploded outward and threw anything that wasn't rooted to the ground away like garbage, including the weaker ninjas and the civilians. Or. Shit. Boom. Naruto and Yugao barely avoided the massive paw that came smashing down upon them, and Yugao herself held back a gasp at what had thrown the paw. "Uzumaki-san, you really thought that could kill me? I am Yujiro Nai. I am the Jinchuriki for the Nibi no Nekometa. And after years of force testing and intense training, I have become immune to poisons. You'll have to do better than that to kill me." And as Naruto suppressed his own gasp, a huge purplish-black flaming two-tailed cat emerged from the dust and glared down at him with glowing yellow eyes. "And like I said before, I am here to carry out your assassination." And just like that, the battle was back on. Yujiro lunged and swiped at unreadable speeds and slammed her paw into Naruto. The impact was something the Kyuubi Jinchuriki had never felt before in his life. A combination of heat and great force sent him flying for nearly half a mile and into one of a nearby training grounds. His puppet armor remarkably sustained little damage, but the same could not be said for his organic body. He knew that 3 ribs had been broken after that blow, and his head was spinning. Shit. Yujiro appeared suddenly and swiped again. He narrowly avoided it, but it was not enough to count for something. Yujiro leapt up and inhaled before breathing a stream of purple fire at her target. Shit. Earth release. Earth barrier. A slab of rock rose from the ground just in time to block the flames and give Naruto an opening. Water release. Cry of the splitting daisy. And as Naruto cut through the large daisy-shaped glob of water and prepared to slam both halves into Yujiro's face, 3 things happened. First. Sarutobi and the Jounins appeared and tried to attack. Second, his chakra spiked, and third, a huge wall of fused-together skeletons appeared and blocked Naruto's attack. "What the? Uzumaki-san, you continue to underestimate me. Part of Nibi's power is necromancy." And as soon as she said this, an army of skeletons rose up from the ground. "Attack." The skeletons surged forward. The others tried to interfere but were stopped when several shadow clones of Naruto appeared and said, "Wait. I'll handle this one alone." They tried to object but it was too late. Naruto leapt up, bit his thumb and smeared it across his puppet, storing seals. In 35 puffs of smoke appeared Fox Naruto, Yoshino, Onitenshi, Mizuki, Danzo and the Konoha. The crowd watched in awe as the artificial limbs of his beetle-like armor and his left organic hand attached chakra strings to them, giving him control of each and every puppet on the battlefield. With numerous finger twitches, the area exploded into battle. Puppets and skeletons clashed. Fox Naruto started hacking skeletons apart with its Zanbatsu with the efficiency of any elite ninja. Onitenshi grabbed several with its tentacles, while cleaving several more with its axe. Mizuki and Danzo worked as a team and tore through skeletons with ease, and the Root were zipping in and out of the skeletons and taking them apart like toys. But the most impressive was the puppet Yoshino. She launched a wave of chakra from her palm that blasted away, then started using a fiercer version of the Jaiken to smash the skeletons apart. Then as she was getting swarmed on, she did a Kaiten that was reinforced by water. Each puppet was moving at great speeds, and it left many wondering how the hell Naruto was able to control all of that and still battle with Yujiro. "Holy shit!" cried out one of the Jounin, a purple-haired woman by the name of Anko. The others were thinking along the same lines. Especially when Naruto drew a chain scythe with his right hand and swung it over his head a few times. "I will kill you," he said emotionlessly as he leapt up. Yujiro leapt back and avoided a slash to the eye, then lashed out with one of her tails. It slammed into Naruto, and it temporarily shattered his control over his puppets. It lasted only a second, but it was enough for Fox Naruto to lose a tail and Yoshino to get slashed across the chest by one of the skeletons. Naruto grit his teeth. "Is this all you can do, Uzumaki-san?" asked Yujiro as Naruto took a knee and fought to regain his breath. He growled. Naruto stood up and locked eyes with the demonic cat. "Hello Jinchuriki, I have one more trick locked away in this armor of mine." "Oh? Indeed. I do not know what it can do, but perhaps it will give me a slight advantage. You see, I have been studying the flight patterns of the beetle and the exact motions the wings use in order to keep it suspended in the air." Yujiro's eyes widened a bit and so did the gathered crowds. "There's no way," muttered Sarutobi. But indeed it was true. Naruto hunched over and focused chakra into the shell on his back. It split down the middle and parted, swinging into an upward position and exposing what was hidden underneath. Niji, Hinata, Sasuke, Hanabi, Tsuchi and the rest of the Konoha 12 genin arrived just in time to see a pair of transparent insect-style wings unfold from their protective shell and glow with Naruto's chakra. There were audible gasps as the wings settled into position. Naruto smirked at the huge cat and said, "Using automatic motion seals and my own chakra, I am able to use these." The wings began to flap, gaining more speed with each flap until finally they were nearly invisible. "I haven't had much practice but I'm good at improvising." The wings finally gained the required speed and began to let out a loud humming noise. They vanished and the only thing visible was the faint glow of Naruto's chakra. "Hello Jinchuriki, you will regret not striking me while I was doing this." And then it happened. Naruto Uzumaki. Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi no Kitsune and aspiring puppet using prodigy took flight. He launched high into the air and his puppets continued to decimate Yujito's skeletons. "No fucking way," yelled the Inuzuka boy by the name of Kiba. Beside him, the Aburam boy was stunned as well. Hanabi smirked. Yujito hissed and said, "That won't save you," before crouching and leaping up after him. Naruto grit his teeth and swooped to the side just as Yujito shot past him. He then had to move to the other side as she came down at him. As she descended he swung his chain scythe and slashed her across the back. It affected her little, but it did leave a slight injury. The cat wasted no time in leaping back up at him. He reacted by stabbing her with all four scorpion tails and slashing across her snout with his scythe. She hissed and swiped with a claw. He avoided by a hair, but the strain of having to do so caused his broken ribs to shoot a wave of pain through his body. On the ground his puppet stopped and the skeletons returned to the ground. "Ah!" screeched Yujito as the scythe danced across one of her left eye. It healed in a matter of seconds, but it was enough of a distraction for Naruto to fly forward and jam his tails into her chest. "Ah damn you." She swiped with a paw as she fell back to the ground and it connected. He was sent flying to the huge fenced-off area of the Forest of Death before he recovered. The cat wasted no time and dashed after him. The crowd watched as Naruto and Yujito battled it out. They saw the huge cat jump repeatedly and to try and take Naruto out of the sky, and they watched as Naruto struck every opening he could. It was an exact representation of a house cat trying to grab a June bug out of the air. Sarutobi would have chucked if the situation wasn't so serious. Yujito hissed loudly as the scythe slashed her side before she slapped Naruto with tail. Naruto fell into the Forest of Death. He weaved in and out of trees trying to regain his flight pattern, but with a giant cat coming at him, it made it difficult. Finally he recovered and opted to try and fly back up above the trees. It was a failed attempt as Yujito had a huge dome of skeletal bone encase both of them. "Should what now?" "Uzumaki-san." Naruto paused in and looked at the huge cat in front of him. Everything got quit except for the hum of his wings. Yujito's voice was so full of sadness and regret. Not the voice of someone who wanted to assassinate him. He raised an eyebrow. "Your fighting ability is simply remarkable and your unique mind has granted you gifts that others only dream of. You are truly a worthy opponent. I am happy to have met you. I enjoyed our battle." Naruto narrowed his eyes as Yujito's chakra began to spike. He looked at her and saw a tear fall from her eye. "I'm sorry." And before he could say anything there was an intense flash of light and fire, then everything went blank. Sarutobi, Yugao, Anko, Ibiki, Kakashi and everyone else felt and saw the explosion of fire and bone coming from the hellish-looking dome and knew what was happening. "Naruto-kun." Scene change. Naruto groaned and opened his eyes. He was on his back in 6-inch deep water. All signs of his puppet armor was gone, leaving him in only his boxer shorts. He sat up and cringed in pain as his ribs harshly reminded him of his injuries. "Ugh, where am I?" he said to no one as he looked around. He was in a sewer lit with a pale yellow glow. The place seemed familiar to him, but he couldn't place his finger on it. He got to his feet and clutched his ribs before beginning his trek to look around. As he moved throughout the maze of cement and iron pipes, he suddenly got a lock on a powerful energy. He followed the trail for what seemed like forever until he came upon the source. It was then that his memory came rushing back. And as he gazed upon the pair of huge red demonic eyes locked behind the massive gate with a piece of paper that said seal, a rumbling laughter could be heard. "Ah Uzumaki Naruto. We meet again." "Kyuubi," said Naruto. "Indeed mortal. I've been awake now since that girl tapped into the Nibi's power. I must say you've grown since our last meeting from that pathetic 10-year-old into something a bit more respectable. What is it you want, Kyuubi?" "Ah, you should already know what I want, but it matters not right now. Currently the Nibi container is attempting to use the Hellfire Jutsu on you and I'm doing everything I can to keep us alive by encasing your body in a barrier of my chakra. And I want you to defeat this girl, mortal. I am the Kyuubi no Kitsune. The strongest of the Biju. You are my container." Show this girl what power really is. Use my power boy and make her submit to you." Naruto narrowed his eyes and said, "What is it you want in return?" "Ha ha ha, straight to the point, I see. A good quality. Unfortunately we don't have time to discuss that. We will elaborate more on what I want in return after you defeat this girl." Naruto looked up for a minute, then said, "Fine then." Scene change. Vegito reverted to her human form and looked on as the jutsu finished hitting her opponent with the deep red-orange flames of the fire of hell itself and let a few more tears drop. She was holding a gash on her side and breathing heavily. "I am deeply sorry, Uzumaki-san. I never wished to harm you. I could never willingly harm someone like you." She turned and began to walk away. She still had a Hyuga to kidnap. But she never got another step forward because there was a sudden pulse of energy more powerful than Ebi's and it froze her in place. Then no, it can't be. She whirled around and saw something that would forever be implanted into her mind. Naruto was there. Looking at her with blood-red demonic eyes, and a round sphere of demonic red chakra was just barely finishing fading away. He was unharmed. And the wings of his beetle puppet armor still hummed and glowed with chakra. He narrowed his eyes and vanished. She never saw the fist coming until it sank into her gut. Back. She flew back and smashed through two trees before slamming into a thicker one. She felt several bones snap and she felt Naruto appear before her. Red chakra swirled violently around him. His canines were fangs and the whisker marks on his cheeks were jagged and thick and his hair looked more like rough fur. She could do nothing as he landed on the ground in front of him and approached with his scythe. The wings stopped humming and became motionless and the four scorpion tails arched over and prepared to strike. Never in her life had anything like this ever came even close to happening to her. It was at this moment that she acknowledged one thing. And was that she was about to be killed by this guy. Naruto looked at Vegito and examined her neck. He didn't like what he saw. "So you are someone's slave." Vegito, whose eyes had been closed in acceptance, snapped them back open in surprise and Naruto touched the seal on around her neck. The tails and the scythe had been retracted and he was now just examining the seal. What are you doing?" she asked. Naruto simply replied by lifting her up bridal style. "I won't kill you. Fellow Jinchuriki." She gasped as Naruto's wings began to flap again. "I'd be a fool to kill someone who is like me. It would only destroy the only kin I have in this world." But why? Why spare me? My job is to assassinate you and kidnap one of the Hyugas under your protection." Naruto growled and said, "And you will tell me who hired you for that job. I have no doubt in my mind that someone from here contacted your cage and the fact that you have a binding cursed seal around your neck proves you had no choice in the matter." Vegito nodded and sighed sadly. "It's true. The Raikage can kill me by flooding my body with electricity from this seal. I have to obey his rule. I will fuse your body with that seal and free you from the Raikage's grasp. Afterwards you will tell me who hired you, understand?" "Wait, what do you mean fuse my body to the seal?" Naruto sighed and took flight. "You will know in time." Scene change. Sarutobi didn't know whether to be happy or nervous when he felt the Kyuubi's chakra and neither did any of the others. Some of the ninjas started panicking and saying that the demon was escaping but were silenced by Ibiki. Yuga was distraught as were the rest of his allies. Sasuke was looking on anxious while Yuga was openly crying. It was a tense moment for everyone waiting at the edge of the forest of death. Then a red glow shot out and hovered above the forest for a second before it zipped over to the group and landed onto the ground. They gasped when Naruto stood up and looked at everyone as the Kyuubi's influence faded from his person. He was holding the Kumo Kunoichi in his right arm and was limping slightly from the pain in his ribs. He didn't say anything. He just approached his downed puppets and resealed them back into his arm before turning back to Sarutobi. "Take her to the hospital. She holds valuable info as to why she is here and why she was trying to assassinate me and kidnap one of the 3 banished Hyugas." Sarutobi's eyes widened and he gently took the young Kumo-nin from Naruto's arm. "Naruto-kun." Naruto was suddenly grabbed in a hug from Yugao. He winced in pain and glared. "I was so scared for you, Naruto-kun. Get off of me. My ribs are killing me." During this time several others arrived on the scene. Tsuchi smirked and said, "That was one hell of a fight, man." Sasuke smirked and gave Naruto a nod. Hanabi grabbed him in a hug as well and said, "Naruto-sama is alive." Hinata and Niji just smiled and Yugao, who was still holding on to him, planted a kiss on his forehead. The other members of the Konoha 12 were stunned and therefore couldn't do anything but gape. Ibiki had a look of respect for Naruto and Anko was looking on in interest. Finally Sarutobi approached him and said, "Come on, Naruto. We have to get you looked at as well." He then grabbed the boy's shoulder and vanished with him. Time skip. The next day it was all over Konoha. Naruto was once again the talk of the town. It was the clash of the demons, people would say. A battle of titans. Those who had witnessed it were very enthusiastic about letting anyone they could know how Naruto was able to obtain flight. Naruto himself was walking through the hospital with his chest and stomach wrapped in bandages. His armor was in his room and so was his trench coat and a good portion of his weapons. He was limping a bit, but he took the pain. Finally he came to a door marked 203 and pushed it open. Vegito was there lying on the bed and looking up at the ceiling. When he entered she looked at him with sad eyes. "Hello, Uzumaki-san." Naruto merely grunted and approached her. He pulled out an bottle and a small paintbrush and said, "Hold still," before he began drawing around the seal on her neck. "What are you doing?" I said hold still. He finished drawing and began to flip through hand signs. Sealing art fusion. Vegito's body was suddenly filled with the strangest sensation she had ever felt and she could feel the power of the binding curse seal on her neck flowing into her and granting her power. Her eyes turned yellow and that was the only physical change. The whole process took only a couple of minutes but it felt like forever to her. When it was over she looked at Naruto with wide eyes and asked, "What did you do?" Naruto shrugged and said, "I fused you with that seal. That is the only way I know how to get rid of such a thing. It worked for one of my puppets who was once human, so I figured it would work for you. Since this seal electrocuted you when the Raikage wanted you should now have the power over electricity." Vegito was shocked. "Why you really did that for me?" He nodded. She didn't know what to say. This guy who is supposed to be her enemy. The guy that was supposed to spare no one after fighting them had not only freed her but given her a new power as well. She did the only thing she could think of. And that was to launch herself at him and grab him in a tight hug. "Thank you Uzumaki-kun." Naruto winced in pain but took it. "You can thank me by telling me who hired you." Vegito nodded and said, "I don't know the specific details of the Raikage's clients, but I do know this. The people that sent the message to the Raikage and hired me as your assassin were a few members of your village's council." At these words, Naruto froze. And as the reality of the situation began to take hold in his mind his face twisted into a scowl. "I'm going to kill them." Chapter 11. Kyuubi's Want. As Naruto left the room and continued to mumble about the brutal slow death of the council, Vegito could only stare. So that's the type of person he has become. A cold mostly emotionless killer. She could relate to Naruto though. She herself being a Jinchuriki knew of what type of life her kind was exposed to and it could yield numerous results. Mostly they were all bad. Though she couldn't believe Naruto had the balls to directly threaten the council of a ninja village. Either he was that powerful, that arrogant or he had allies in high up places. She did notice while she was fighting him the night before that the Hokage seemed worried about him. She was about to get up when said Hokage walked into the room flanked by 6 Anbu. "Young woman, I know you were under orders and that you were forced to do what you did, but I still have to take you to prison for a while. You understand?" Vegito nodded. She could fight back, but that would cause more problems. For one, that was the Hokage. No matter how old and feeble he looked, he was still the Hokage and therefore the most powerful ninja in the Hidden Leaf. Then there was Naruto, who was probably the second most powerful ninja here. Add to the fact that Naruto had just defeated her a few hours ago. On top of that, she was still pretty messed up. Yeah, she wasn't going to make it if she tried. "I understand, Hokage-san." The Anbu stepped forward and helped her out of bed to let her out. Scene change. Naruto stepped back into his room and found Yugao sitting on his bed. "Hi Naruto," she said. Naruto raised an eyebrow at her sullen tone, but shrugged. He made his way over to his bed and grabbed a few extra bandages. "I'm sorry." Naruto looked at her confused. Yugao chuckled mirthlessly and said, "I'm sorry for last night. I'm supposed to be an Anbu captain, right? But when that cloud shinobi attacked you I panicked. The thought of you dying scared me. I froze up. I must seem pretty pathetic to you, huh?" Naruto just shrugged. Yugao frowned and said, "Well fine, don't cheer me up any. I'm fine." Naruto frowned as well. "Good, because I don't cheer people up. If you can't get over it then sit there and wallow." Yugao felt a bit hurt by his brutally direct statement. "Besides, I'm still alive, aren't I? So quit with all of the emotions. It's pointless." Yugao leapt to her feet and grabbed Naruto. She planted a kiss on his forehead and kept her lips there for a few more seconds. When she was done she let the boy go and smiled lovingly into his eyes. "It's never pointless to care for someone." She then vanished. Naruto looked at the ground with the faintest of blushes on his cheeks. "Damn woman," he mumbled. "Time skip. You idiots. You moronic assholes. Do you have any idea of the severity of the situation you have placed not only yourselves but the entirety of Konoha in? It took every ounce of persuasive power I have to convince Naruto not to come here and kill you all. This is unacceptable. And now we have Kumo's Jinchuriki in custody that has sworn her loyalty to Naruto now. If Kumo finds this out, all hell is going to break loose." Explanation. Now. The civilian half of the council flinched at Sarutobi's tone. He was not playing around. His eyes held the bright flames of fury and they seemed to pierce right into the very soul. But despite all of this several members found their courage, mainly Hamura, Kaharu, the Haruno head and the woman in the red kimono. Okage-sama, we understand that you feel for the boy, but you must understand that the sooner that thing is gone, the sooner Konoha will be safe. We have taken into account all of the risks and handled them appropriately. And furthermore we believe we have the best interests of Konoha at heart. Sarutobi exploded. His chakra flared all over and his killing intent shot through the roof. You idiots. He took a couple of deep breaths to calm himself. Sigh. You fools have no idea what you are getting yourself into. I may have talked Naruto out of killing you now, but there's no stopping him the next time you try something. If you keep this up you all will be killed by Naruto and his companions. The council glared. Sarutobi sighed and said, and I will not stop him again, before he vanished. This left a stunned group of Konoha council members. Hokage. Sama. No. He didn't mean that. He couldn't have. Scene change. Naruto made his way toward the front gates of Konoha deep in thought. Sarutobi had practically begged him not to burst into the council room and behead every single member of the civilian half and add them to his puppet collection. It took the Hokage an entire hour, but they had managed to dissuade Naruto from his goal. He found that odd. He normally didn't listen to anyone when he was angered. Perhaps it was because it was the Hokage himself and not someone else. If Naruto could truly say he had anyone he cared for, it would be the Hokage. The one person that had been there for him since the beginning. The only one in all of Konoha who gave a fuck back when he was little. I guess I owe it to Hokage Jiji to listen to him, he said to himself. Naruto-sama. Naruto looked up. He was at the gate already and there was Hanabi smiling happily up at him. Sasuke was behind her smirking at him while the pink-haired girl hid behind Sasuke and peered from behind his back. Naruto raised an eyebrow at her but didn't comment. He looked back at Hanabi and nodded. She smiled and said, what are you doing here, Naruto-sama? Did you come to see us off on our first hire mission? She looked a bit hopeful. Naruto examined the three genin before him. The pink-haired one was feeling a bit less nervous but was still half hidden behind the Uchiha who looked exasperated and Hanabi was smiling at Naruto. I guess, he said at last. Hanabi's smile brightened and she went in for a hug. However, that was stopped when Naruto vanished and reappeared next to the pink-haired girl, causing her to gasp and widen her eyes. No hugs, said Naruto simply to Hanabi who looked pouty. It was proven too when she huffed and said, you let that purple-haired old hag hug you all the time. No hugs, said Naruto again. Sasuke chuckled a bit but hid it well. Naruto looked up and said, so where's the old man you're supposed to be guarding? Sasuke pointed to a short unimportant-looking man with graying hair and a sake bottle in his hand. He looked at Naruto and said, you don't look so tough. Naruto's eyebrow twitched but luckily Hanabi who said saved the man, don't insult Naruto-sama. He's done things most ninjas could only dream of. Yeah, if they wanted to use dolls, said Sasuke. Watch it, Uchiha, said Naruto. Yeah, watch it or I'll jiken you in the balls, said Hanabi. The pink-haired girl widened her eyes. Sasuke just crossed his arms and looked up with a smirk. It was then that the pink-haired girl spoke for the first time. My name is Sakura Haruno. Naruto tensed for a split second at the last name but regained composure. He looked the girl right in her bright emerald green eyes and said, Naruto Uzumaki. She moved from behind Sasuke and gave a polite bow. It's nice to meet you. Chan, was Naruto's response. Sakura didn't say anything, but her inner self had something to say. See? I told you he wasn't all that bad. Mom is being an idiot. Why yeah. Maybe. She gave Naruto another quick bow and then hid back behind Sasuke. Hanabi scoffed, but before she could say anything Kakashi appeared. Uzumaki, come to see of your comrades, eh? I assure you they're perfectly safe with me. This is just a C-rank mission after all. I'm not worried for their safety. They should be able to look out for themselves. Kakashi's sweat dropped. Well anyway, it's time to go, team. We can get to Wave by tomorrow if we leave now. Hi sensei, they all said. The team turned to leave. Bye Naruto-sama. I'll miss you, said Hanabi with a bright smile. Sasuke just nodded at Naruto. He nodded back then turned away. But when he turned around his vision suddenly blurred and went black. He opened his eyes a few seconds later and found that he was in his mind looking up at the huge glowing eyes of the Kyuubi. Hello Uzumaki Naruto. Scene change. Vegito was taken underground to the dark and dank prisons of Konoha where Ibiki was waiting for her. She knew of this man. He was the specialist in interrogation and torture. She wondered why he was there, but it passed by quickly. He probably was there to make sure she was telling the truth when she told the Hokage what she knew. The Anbu escorting her placed her roughly into the chair and faced her toward Ibiki. Thank you Anbu. I can take it from here. The Anbu bowed then vanished. Ibiki looked down at the girl and focused his gaze on her. She sighed and said, killing intent of that level will not work on me. Hibiki smirked and nodded. Indeed, you are a Jinchuriki after all. Living your whole life with a demon sealed within you would make you immune to such things. Yujito nodded and said, so do you wish to ask me why I have told your cage what I told him? No, not really. I already have a good idea. No, I'm merely here to keep an eye on you. Hokage-sama should be arriving back soon from his meeting with the council, and then he will ask you more. Or perhaps just talk about your newfound loyalty to Naruto-san. I see. But I on the other hand have all kinds of questions to ask. Yujito snapped her head to the left. There was a purple-haired woman smiling insanely at her. She looked to be about 18 and was wearing fishnet, a skirt and a tan open trench coat. Anko, what brings you here? Anko just grinned more and walked up to Yujito. She placed her fingers on her chin and inspected her face carefully. Very pretty you are. Yujito didn't say anything. So it's my understanding you have pledged your loyalty to Naruto. Is this correct? What about your village? Yujito sighed and said, I no longer have any ties to Kumo. Uzumaki-kun has freed me from that place and therefore I owe a great deal to him and the only way I can think to repay him is to become his to do with whatever he wants. To serve him and him alone. Enko raised an eyebrow. Plus the Nibi seems attracted to the Kyuubi. Enko almost laughed. Well, that's certainly a strange thing. Freed from one master to willing serve another. Oh well, it's not my business. However, I do wish to know one thing. Yes. Is it true you had a binding seal on your neck and that Naruto has taken that away from you? Yujito nodded. Yes, it is true. Uzumaki-kun freed me from the binding seal's influence by using a modified medical seal to fuse me with the seal's power. He said I should have the power of electricity now since the seal was designed to electrocute me. Enko nodded. I see. It seems there is much to that guy. Thanks for the info. She turned to leave. Oh, and if you want to serve Naruto, be prepared. He's quite the chick magnet and has 3 girls already living with him. She then vanished quickly to hide her smirk. Yujito didn't say anything, but her inner demon was quite talkative on the subject. So? You have sworn loyalty to the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Quite strange indeed. Yujito turned to the right and saw a cell. In that cell was a young man about Naruto's age. He looked like he'd been there for a while. He wore a black shirt with one sleeve longer than the other and only covered his chest and upper back, and H wore a pair of black pants. Yujito notices that his skin was very pale and that his face showed no emotions whatsoever. His arms were chained above his head. Who are you? She asked. The boy looked at her with dead eyes for a whole minute before he said, Sai. My name is Sai. Scene change. Niji and Hinata stared at the ruined remains of their home and sighed. 3/4 of the place was unrecognizable and none of the security puppets were functioning. Now where are we going to live? Asked Niji with a loud sigh as a piece of the roof fell to the ground. Hinata didn't say anything. You won't be living anywhere, demon lovers. Trash belongs on the streets. Niji and Hinata turned around and saw a few main house Hyugas smirking at them. Hey Haki, I wouldn't get too close to them, they might taint you with their foul demon-loving presence. Hehehe, Hiashi-sama did the right thing in exiling you too, and that little skank brat sister of yours. Niji narrowed his eyes. Perhaps we should kill you right now, eh? Niji scoffed. You couldn't kill us even if you tried. We're stronger than all of you fools. Haki glared and took a step closer. Niji took up a fighting stance that different from the Jaikin, and so did Hinata. You're lucky they removed the seal from your head, branch trash. And you're lucky Uzumaki-san isn't here to kill you slower than we will. Care to try that out? Niji smirked and Hinata glared. Gladly. But before anything else could happen, Yugao, the Inyazuka clan head Tsum and the Nara clan head Shikaku appeared. Step away from the 2 Hyugas, said Tsum. Haki scoffed and said, those 2 are not Hyugas. Either way, they are not to be touched. Like Uzumaki-san, they are under our protection. Get it? Asked Tsum with a death glare. The Hyugas bristled but got the message. Fine then. They then turned and left. Once they were gone, the 3 elite ninjas looked at the 2 ex-Hyugas. Hinata gave a bow and Niji said, I thank you for your assistance. Even if we didn't need it. Tsum smirked and vanished while Shikaku sighed and said, just don't get yourselves killed. It would too much of a hassle to clean up your corpses. Yeah. Shikaku vanished as well, leaving Yugao with the 2. Damn, this is going to take forever to clean up, she said. Hinata and Niji nodded in agreement. Scene change. Anko was lost in thought. The information that Cloud Kunoichi had given her had her thinking. She didn't know that Naruto was capable of such a thing. To fuse a cursor of binding seal to the person it was meant to enslave and grant them whatever power the seal may have held. She briefly wondered what would happen to her if Naruto were to do something like that for her own cursed seal. She crushed the slight feeling of hope that had began to rise up. There was no way she was going to crawl to Naruto. It was beneath her to do such a pathetic thing. Besides, Naruto would probably call her pathetic if she appeared and asked him to fuse her with the seal on her neck, sounding all desperate and shit. "I'll think more on this later," she said to herself as she made her way to her favorite dango place. Perhaps I could become an ally of his. A comrade in arms that he would see as more efficient with complete control over the cursed seal. She placed her usual order and began to talk to herself again. It seems the popular thing is to either pledge loyalty to him alone or try and win his love. She frowned at this. Naruto was 7 years younger than her if she remembered correctly. Way too young to try and get involved with. Though she had to admit his strength, knowledge and mindset were far beyond his years. He was mature enough. Mentally, that is. He could handle a night sex should any of the girls he's living with manage to succeed in getting him to participate in the action. But everything else about him was still just a 12-year-old boy. And the thought of pledging loyalty to him left a sour taste in her mouth. Ugh. I'll think on this later. She ignored the sneers sent her way. Scene change. Yujito looked at Sai as he finished telling his story. So you were defeated by a woman named Yugao Yuzuki. An elite Anbu who has affections for Uzumaki-kun. Sai nodded. Yeah. It wasn't very long ago at all that Uzumaki and his little group of 6 completely wiped out the route. Such a task should be impossible, but it happened. You are lucky to be alive today. Uzumaki is a fearsome opponent. I hear the guards talk about him daily. Most of it is out of hatred for him, but there are a few that hold him in high regard. Yujito nodded. Indeed. Never in my life have I had such a challenging battle and lost. I don't know how strong the Raikage was compared to me because he merely needed me as his slave, not a sparring partner, so I cannot compare Uzumaki-kun's strength to the Raikage. Sai nodded and looked up. I would like to meet Uzumaki. You've never met him? Asked Yujito surprised. Sai shook his head. No. On the night Danzo-sama was to try and convince Uzumaki to join the route, I was to eliminate Yugao. But I overestimated my strength and underestimated hers and Hate's as well. They were more than a match for me. So no, I have yet to meet Uzumaki. Yujito stared at Sai. Perhaps he'll come here. Maybe the Hokage will bring him here to talk with me and then I can direct his attention towards you. Sai looked down and said, that might not be a good idea. Uzumaki thinks all of Root is dead. If he discovers I am still alive he may lash out. Just don't tell him you're from the Root. I'll have to if I wish to speak with him. Yujito sighed. We'll just have to wait and see, I guess. Time skip. Sarutobi sighed and stamped a few more documents. It had been a few hours since his talk with the council and he still had yet to visit the Kumo Kunoichi in the prisons again. He had to make sure she was telling the truth. He knew she was, but it never hurt to verify it in front of a few other ninjas. I'm getting too old for all of this shit, he said to no one. And where is Naruto? This was a question that had came to his mind repeatedly ever since he had managed to convince Naruto not to murder the civilian half of the council. Naruto had vanished after that. Deep down he still didn't know how he had done it. Naruto was dead set on killing the fools too. Flashback. Please let go of me, Hokage Jiji. Those fuckers will pay with their blood. And nothing is going to stop me. Naruto. Please think this out. You can't kill them. Listen to me. Hokage Jiji, those bastards sent an assassin after me. Another Jinchuriki. From an enemy village. I will kill them all. Sarutobi had Naruto in a bear hug, trying desperately to keep Naruto from busting into the council room. They were a block away from the council room and many villagers were watching in fear and fascination as Sarutobi struggled to restrain Naruto. Naruto, please. I know they're all idiots, but I need them alive for now. They are vital to keep the village going. Naruto growled and bit his thumb before summoning Onitenshi. The puppet dashed toward the council room. No, Naruto. Please listen to me. Listen to the Hokage. The puppet froze and so did Naruto. Sarutobi capitalized on this. Naruto, I know what they have done was stupid and arrogant. I know that you have vowed to take no one's crap, but please spare them this one time. I will put them in their place, I promise you that, but if you go and kill off the council right now, Konoha will fall into disarray. And I simply cannot let that happen. Especially with the Chunin exams only 3 months away. Naruto turned towards Sarutobi and for a second the Hokage thought he was going to attack, but he was relieved when Naruto visibly calmed down and said, fine. I will spare them this one time and this one time only. They will not get a second chance to mock me. Be sure to let them know that. Sarutobi nodded and let go of the puppet user. I thank you, Naruto. Naruto merely grunted and vanished. Then flashback. That boy can be so much trouble sometimes, he said with a sigh. But he didn't feel any anger towards Naruto for it. It was Konoha's own fault anyway. He stamped a few more documents before he stood up. Just then a messenger bird flew into his window. There was a scroll on its back and it looked to have been written in a bit of a hurry. He took the scroll off the bird's back that gave the bird a well-deserved snack before opening the scroll and reading. Okajama. Azuna-san has apparently been withholding on his info. This mission is not a C-rank mission as there are powerful people after Tazuna-san's head. Shortly after arriving in Wave Country we were attacked by a pair of Chunin from Kiri called the Demon Brothers. Then we were attacked by the A-rank criminal known as Mamachi's abuser. I know for a fact that he will attack again. Azuna is currently not safe right now with just us four. Requesting some backup. Signed Hada Kakashi. Sarutobi sighed again. Damn it, who am I going to send? Everyone else is busy with something. Oh wait, there's Anko. No, she seems distracted right now. He pondered for a few more minutes trying to see who he could send. It was then that he had a sudden idea. Naruto hasn't had a mission for a while. Yeah, he'd be perfect. He got to his feet. Now I just have to find him. He pulled out his crystal ball and activated it. Locate Naruto Uzumaki. The ball flashed through a few scenes until it finally located his target. Naruto was at the front gate of Konoha, but there was something wrong. For one, he was passed out on the ground. Shit. Scene change. Ayubi, said Naruto with no feeling. Indeed, boy. I suppose I'm here to discuss your payment for me using your chakra. The Kyuubi grinned and said, indeed. I have spent the last few hours looking at your memories for the last 2 years and I must say you've intrigued me. This puppet jutsu is quite interesting. Able to create soldiers only you can command. Whether from wood or from the bodies of your fallen foes. And your brutality is impressive. Naruto didn't say anything. Uzumaki, I have decided on what I want from you. I want my freedom. Why would I do that? I have no desire to meet an early death. Hehehehe, such an entertaining human you are, boy. Know what I have in mind will not kill you. Ever hear of a transfer rune? Huh? The transfer rune is a type of ancient magic. This magic is called ancient runes. Its power far surpasses that of any of your human seals. They hold great power and if used correctly they can help a person achieve impossible things. I see. You wish for me to use this rune to transfer your consciousness somewhere else. A new body preferably. Ah, now you're catching on. And I have the perfect body in mind. An image of Fox Naruto appeared. You want my puppet to become your new body? The fox chuckled. I will teach you how to draw runes and you will give that doll to me for a new body. Once that is done we will both be able to draw upon my chakra. The Shiki Fujin seal will not be broken and I will still be bound to you. If you die I die, there is no way around that, but I will not live out the rest of my existence trapped within a human boy. Naruto looked up and thought. Fox Naruto would come to life if he accepted this deal. The term seemed fair enough. Also there will always be a chakra string attached to you and me connecting us. I won't be able to travel more than a mile away from you. Why the hell would you choose to live like that? Bound to me? Idiot, I'm already bound to you. This would just be a different form of that bind. Now do you accept the deal or not? He looked the fox in the eyes and said, fine then. Haha, excellent. I will begin to instruct you in runes tomorrow. For now wake up. Naruto's eyes snapped open and he sat up quickly. Damn fox, he mumbled. He had been out for a few hours it looked like. He yawned and turned to head to his home only to bump into Sarutobi. Okajiji, he said. Sarutobi smiled and said, I thought something had happened to you. I saw you passed out there so I got worried. No need to worry, Hokage. Now is there anything you wish to talk to me about? Sarutobi nodded, yes actually. It seems Kakashi's team has met difficulties on their mission. It's not a C rank anymore, it's an A rank. I see. Naruto, you are to go and give them support. Naruto nodded. But first I need you to come with me. We are going down to the Konoha prisons. Why? Because a certain Jinchuriki who has pledged her loyalty to you is there and you need to pick her up. She will accompany you on this mission. Naruto nodded. I understand, Hokage. Wait, did you just say, pledged loyalty to me? Sarutobi nodded with a grin. Yes indeed. Yujito asked a lot of questions about you when I visited last. She seems quite taken with you already. Naruto didn't miss the grin. Damn it. Chapter 12. Naruto's teammates. Mission to Wave. Naruto said nothing as he and Sarutobi entered the dark hallways of the Konoha prison ward. He saw numerous criminals staring back at him from behind their cage bars. Some were pleading while others simply looked crazy. He ignored them all. Finally, after a couple more minutes they arrived in a large open cell. Yujito was there, sitting in a chair and looking into the cell to her right, and Ibiki was to the left keeping an eye on her. Sarutobi widened his eyes when he saw just who was in the cell Yujito was looking into, but decided to say nothing. Yujito finally turned from the cell and bowed slightly when she saw them. Okajama, Uzumaki-kun. Naruto sighed. Ah, Yujito. I trust your stay in here was enjoyable. Yujito smirked and said, yes, but one is not supposed to enjoy being imprisoned. The Hokage chuckled. Indeed. Anyway, I have come here to inform you that you are free to go. I was originally going to confirm in front of a few ninja that what you told me earlier was the truth, but I've decided that would merely be a waste of time since I used a truth serum on you that day and everything. Yujito was going to state that she was immune to such things, but a subtle nod from Sarutobi shut her up. However, before you do anything, I have a request. Yujito looked on with attention. I want you to accompany Naruto on an A-rank mission to Wave Country. It seems Kakashi and his team is having problems. I know you're still recovering from your fight, but I'm sure you can handle it, right? She widened her eyes and gave a glance in Naruto's direction. The puppet user merely sighed and said, we must hurry as there is little time. She nodded and got to her feet. Ibiki, his job over with, vanished to get a drink while Sarutobi handed a scroll to Naruto. Here are the details of the mission. Naruto nodded and pocked the scroll. I'll make sure to succeed Hokage Jiji. Yujito smiled. Okay then Naruto, I'll take my leave. Try and be gone within the next 10 minutes, okay? Naruto nodded and turned toward the exit. But before any of them could leave, a new voice rang out from one of the cells. So you're Uzumaki, huh? Strange for one of your caliber to be so young. Either way, I am honored to meet you. Naruto wordlessly approached the cell and remembered that this was the cell that Yujito was staring into. He peered inside and raised an eyebrow at the kid inside. He had never seen this guy before. He sort of resembled the Uchiha but had flat black hair and emotionless eyes. He had pale skin and was chained to the wall. Behind Naruto, Sarutobi looked a bit surprised and worried. Who are you? He asked. The kid looked up at Naruto with a fake smile and said, my name is Sai. Formerly of the group of Anbu with the title Root. Naruto narrowed his eyes and stepped closer to the cell. Root. That pathetic band of ninja I turned into my tools. At Sai's nod, Naruto grew a bit angry. How is it you are still among the living? Did you run and hide like a coward? Sai shook his head. No. I was merely on a different mission that day, Naruto-san, so I was spared a death by your hands. Naruto examined Sai for a bit longer and said, how long have you been in here? Sai shook his head. I have been in here since the day the root fell by your hands. You see, my task was to kill Yuzuki Yuigao that day. Naruto narrowed his eyes. But as you can see, that was a failure. Naruto looked up and thought. You're quite young to have been in an Anbu squad. No doubt you have an unusual amount of skill. Sai said nothing. On the back, Sarutobi was looking on with Yujito by his side. I'm surprised that Sai isn't dead yet, said Sarutobi. Yujito didn't say anything. She just continued to observe Naruto as he continued to talk with Sai. So you work directly under that pompous fool Danzo, huh? Naruto then summoned his puppet and showed it to Sai. That fool works for me now, he said with a sadistic grin as he stared into Sai's eyes. When Sai didn't react, he raised an eyebrow. No hint of anger for your lost comrades, huh? Sai just gave that fake smile and said, in Root we are taught to have no emotions. Feelings such as anger will hinder our performance. Besides, you were merely doing what you had to in order to stay alive and to increase your own strength. Naruto examined the ex-Root member for a couple more minutes before he turned around to face Sarutobi. Hokage Jiji, I would like to talk more with this person when I get back from my mission. Sarutobi nodded and Naruto turned back to Sai. I shall return in the future. He then placed a hand on Yujito's shoulder and vanished. He's different than a couple of months ago. Sarutobi nodded. Yes. He seems to be opening up more. If only to listen long enough for someone to speak before deciding on whether or not he should kill them. Sai said nothing and looked down at the floor. Sarutobi examined the boy for a good 3 minutes before he sighed as an idea came to him. He remembered that Sai's uses a type of jutsu. One similar to Naruto and Yujito but so very different as well. He grinned unconsciously. He may have found a team for the puppet user. Sai looked up in confusion as Sarutobi approached the cell and released him from his chains. Boy, come with me. I have a proposition for you. Scene change. Naruto appeared at his damaged home and gave a slight glare in Yujito's direction. The Nibi Jinchuriki had the grace to try and look sheepish. Naruto leapt into one of the holes and proceeded to fish out any salvageable supplies. He grabbed several tools and numerous weapons. He decided to go with a warhammer for his primary weapon since his katana was broken the previous night by Yujito. On the outside, Yujito waited for Naruto to return and was not disappointed when he returned with a storage scroll as long and his forearm strapped to his waist. Now we leave, he said without much feeling as he turned toward the exit of Konoha. Yujito nodded and followed, not really up for saying anything since she felt bad for destroying his home. The two made it to the gate in almost no time at all, and Naruto handed the scroll to Yujito. She rose an eyebrow and stored it in one of her pockets. The Copy Nin's team has encountered more than they were hired for. We are their backup. Yujito nodded and said, and the Hokage wanted me to accompany you in case you run into trouble. I will not leave your side. Naruto shrugged and said, it matters not to me. If you wish to leave and return to Kumo then I won't stop you. Yujito quickly shook her head and said, no I won't return to that place. I am yours now. Naruto sighed and said, I'll tell you the same thing I told a group of women some time back. I have no want or need for living slaves or servants. If you really want to please me then get strong and put up with no one's crap. You can do as you please after that. Yujito looked up and smiled. Well that's certainly something I have never heard before. Given a choice to make my own decisions. It's new. Naruto grunted as the two neared the gate. Hey Uzumaki-kun. Sigh. Why must you call me that? Yujito smirked and said, because I want to. Naruto glared and said, just get on with your question. Yujito grinned and stepped a bit closer to him. Anyway Uzumaki-kun I was wondering about the so-called powers over electricity you granted me. Is it some kind of new bloodline limit? If so how do I activate it? Have you done something similar to yourself? What about the Nibi? Will this affect her in any way? Enough with the questions damn it. I do not know if the electric manipulative abilities you now have is a bloodline limit or not. I do not possess a bloodline limit so I wouldn't know how to activate it. And you'd have to talk to the Nibi to find her stand on it. Yujito placed a finger in her chin and looked up. Oh I see. Anyway we're here. Be prepared. Yujito snapped out of it and looked forward. The two had reached the gate and Naruto was busy eyeing the two Chunin as if daring them to say something. They didn't and Naruto seemed a bit satisfied. Hey Uzumaki-kun I think the Hokage is coming. No sooner than Yujito had finished that sentence did Sarutobi appear in a puff of smoke. Oh good I caught you just in time, he said while breathing slightly heavily. Naruto raised an eyebrow and said, what seems to be the trouble Hokage Jiji? Yujito raised an eyebrow at Naruto's familiarity with the village leader. She knew the Hokage cared for the blonde, but she didn't know the two were so familiar with him. She found herself thinking she was right when she thought that Naruto had friends in high-up places and that's what allowed him to get away with threatening the council. Not that many could stop him anyway. She was a testament to that. Sarutobi seemed a bit hesitant but continued anyway. Well during your time visiting the dungeons I came to a realization. And that is? That you do not have a team. So? I work directly for you. I have my puppets. That is all the team I need. Yujito felt a slight feeling of sadness at his blunt words but crushed it quickly. She felt the same way of course. It was probably how all Jinchuriki felt since they were generally disregarded by society itself. But still. Yeah you may think that way, but I think it is smart for any ninja to have a team to back them up. You know in case there is someone you cannot handle on your own. So how about it? Naruto nodded. Your logic makes sense. So who will be my teammates then? Sarutobi gestured to the spot behind him and the kid from the prison stepped forward. Hello Naruto-san, said Sai with that fake smile. Naruto held back his look of surprise. So this Root will be my teammate now? He asked. Sai bowed his head and said, I am no longer part of Root. HW could I be with them being used for your puppets Naruto-san? Indeed. Fine then. Now who will be the other? The Hokage raised an eyebrow in surprise. You accepted far too fast. Naruto just shrugged and said, I wish to hurry up and get to wave. Sarutobi sighed and gestured toward Yujito who widened her eyes in surprise. If she so wishes I can grant her citizenship in Konoha and I can enlist her into the ranks of Special Op Ninja. She and Sai are very skilled and have no team. And she may even be able to help you with your tenant's chakra. Give you pointers here and there. Naruto looked at Yujito who was looking up with a clouded look in her eyes. Finally she snapped out of it and said, that is acceptable. The Nibi seems happy as well to be around the Kyuubi. What the hell, I'll try this out, she said with a smile. Sarutobi grinned and said, okay then. Sai, Yujito and Naruto are now an official 3-person cell. Good luck. And with that, he vanished. Naruto looked at the two ninja in front of him and sighed. The idea of a team was not something he thought would suit any of them, but he decided not to complain. Alright then. We'll spend the time heading to Wave to get a feel for each other's abilities. Let's go. Sai and Yujito nodded and the 3 ninja vanished. The 2 Chunin let out breaths they didn't know they were holding. Damn I'm beginning to dislike this job, said Izumo. Tetsu just nodded. Scene change. Sarutobi ran into Yugao, Hinata and Niji and frowned at their disheveled states. What happened to you 3? He asked. Yugao glared and said, we've been trying to repair Naruto-kun's home, but that damn cat bitch did too much damage. Hanabi-chan's room is completely destroyed and villagers keep coming by and doing more damage to the place. It's beginning to piss me off. We're heading back right now so we can continue. Sarutobi sighed. The villagers were so dumb at times. Well I wish you luck, oh and you just missed Naruto. He just left on a mission. Yugao widened her eyes. What? And you didn't come and get me so I could see him off? What the hell? Sarutobi chuckled. Oh relax, he won't get killed. Besides, I managed to create an ideal team for him so he isn't alone. Niji raised an eyebrow. A team for Uzumaki-san? Who could possibly work well with him on a team? Sarutobi held back a smirk as he looked at Yugao. Well, first there's Sai. The only root that wasn't killed that night. Yugao instantly snapped her head in the direction of Sarutobi. The Hokage grinned. This was gold. Then there's… well, I'm sure you know who she is. Wait a minute, she? As in another woman? Sarutobi's grin turned devilish. Yes, of course. A team must have one female. Her name is Nai Yujito. I believe you know her as the cat bitch, Yuzuki-chan. What? Scene change. Naruto-san, I believe I heard someone yelling, said Sai. Naruto shrugged and said, ignore it. We have a more important thing to worry about. Sai nodded and the three continued to wave in silence. The trip was rather uneventful in Naruto's opinion. They spent the entire 3 days of travel just monotonously asking each other about their fighting skills and ninja careers. Naruto found that Sai's style of ninjutsu was rather interesting. Able to bring paintings to life and use them like summons. It was this thought that led him to draw the conclusion behind the formation of this team. It was a team that would specialize in fighting large groups of enemies at once. With Naruto's puppetry, Yujito's necromancy and Sai's living paintings, they would easily be able to take on a small army alone before the main force even got there. He inwardly complimented Sarutobi's ingenuity. The boat ride didn't cost a whole lot either. But judging from the man's nervousness, that was probably because of Naruto's ever-cold gaze. That's Tazuna's bridge, explained the man. Once it's finished, Wave will come out of poverty and Gatu's solid grip on this land will slip away. Tazuna will become a hero. Naruto gazed up at the bride. It was impressive. So this Gatu does not want that to happen then? And has hired strong assassins, said Yujito. The man shrugged. That sounds right. Naruto's face remained expressionless, but his words were heard by all. I will kill Gatu. Sai nodded in agreement while pulling out a scroll and an ink brush. The man seemed a bit more relieved at Naruto's declaration and was more open and enthusiastic by the time they arrived on the other shore. Tazuna lives near the center of the village. Here's his address. Naruto took the slip of paper with Tazuna's address on it and turned to leave. Thanks, said Yujito, while Sai just nodded his head. The man smiled. What an odd bunch. Scene change. Kakashi sat at the edge of the forest as Sasuke, Hanabi and surprisingly, Sakura continually walked up and down their assigned tree. He hadn't really expected them to already have this type of control over their chakra, but then again. 2 of them helped Kilroot. He briefly wondered if they could water walk as well. His thoughts then traveled back to their fight with Zabuza. Sasuke and Hanabi were something else. He resolved to talk to the Hokage once they got back in Konoha. These two were far stronger than a normal genin. He concluded that it had to do with Naruto's presence. Well guys, we might as well return to Tazuna's place since you all have this thing mastered. Sasuke and Hanabi shook their heads no and said, we will continue this until we are exhausted. It helps to increase our reserves. I agree, sensei. I need to practice more, otherwise Sasuke-kun will never love me, said Sakura with starry eyes, causing Hanabi to scoff. Kakashi just shrugged and vanished, leaving the 3 genin to their devices. As soon as Kakashi was gone, Sasuke smirked at Hanabi. Hey Hyuga, how about we do some real training, eh? Hanabi smirked and said, a Hyuga training with an Uchiha. The idea is ludicrous. Sakura looked confused and a bit nervous. Ugh eyes. What do you mean? Real training? Hanabi looked at Sakura with an evil glint. Do you want to find out? Sakura gulped. She contemplated declining the offer, but one look at Sasuke gave her confidence. Okay then. Show me what you can do, Sasuke-kun. Hanabi glared. Scene change. The living conditions of this place are abysmal. How could someone even do this? Commented Yujito as her anger levels began to rise. This the way of the world. It's full of greedy bastards, said Naruto as he and his new team passed a group of ragged-looking children playing tag. The village of Wave was in such poor shape that it had even Naruto in thought. Children ran around orphaned and covered in dirt. The vendors barely had scraps of food for sale, and disease and starvation ran rampant all over. He saw the looks in the villagers' eyes and couldn't help but feel a bit of pity for them. They had the eyes of one whose spirit had been broken down, crushed to dust and blown away in the wind. Inwardly his respect for this Tazuna grew a bit for his trying to reclaim their town and trying to bring his people hope again. Naruto-san, I think this is the place, said Sai as he pointed to a rather good conditioned looking home. The address on the paper the boatman had given them and the address on the house were a match. Indeed. Let's proceed. Naruto then walked up to the house and knocked on the door 4 times. "I'm coming," called a female voice, followed by quick footsteps. When the door opened it revealed a beautiful dark blue-haired woman of about 25. "Hello. I'm Tsunami, may I know who you are?" Naruto gave a nod and said, "My name is Naruto. I'm Yujito. And my name is Sai. We are the ninja that were requested for backup by the copy nin Hada Kakashi." Tsunami's eyes widened and she swung the door open. Oh. Come in. Dad. The reinforcements are here. Please make yourselves at home. Dinner will be ready in a bit. The three wordlessly entered the house and found comfortable positions in the living room. Sai sat on the couch and pulled out a drawing book while Naruto pulled out a brush and some ink. Yujito chose to sit close to Naruto but began to chat with Anibi about the eventual power of electricity. For 6 minutes it was quiet until Kakashi entered the room. "Yo Averio." He stopped mid-sentence when he saw who was in the room. "Naruto, the Root Kid and the Kumo assassin. What the hell is the old man thinking? Naruto, I can understand, but to send the other two. Haddock, I do not like it when people stare at me like that. Please avert your eye," said Naruto, cutting Kakashi out of his thoughts. "Huh? Oh sorry, Naruto-san just spaced out there for a second. So Hokage-sama sent you three as backup, huh?" Naruto nodded. "Yes, but we do not know much about the situation." Kakashi nodded. "Well, it seems there are two powerful nin working for Gato. One is the infamous demon of the mist Mamachi Zabuza. Then there's his partner. Posed as a hunter nin, but we do not have a real reading of his skills. Zabuza was powerful and he quickly had us outclassed. Even two of my students displayed an unusual amount of power and skill." "I see. And you sent for backup in case there are more powerful nin working under Gato." "Exactly. Though I wonder about his choice of people though." Naruto narrowed his eyes. "It's just he sent someone the only recently tried to kill Naruto and he sent a member of Naruto's first enemies." "You have nothing to worry about, Haddock-san. We won't betray you," said Sai in a flat emotionless tone. Naruto nodded in agreement and leapt up to one of the corners of the ceiling. "What are you doing?" Naruto said nothing. He merely began to paint on numerous seals before channeling chakra into them and muttering, "Fuin." He then pulled out another scroll and swiped blood across one of the kanji and in a puff of smoke a Chunin puppet appeared. Instantly a chakra string attached to the puppet from the seal and brought the puppet to life. It leapt up to the corner and became motionless. Waiting to strike. The whole process took 5 minutes. "I'm adding a bit of security to Tazuna-san's home," Naruto explained as he repeated the process in another corner. "That way Tsunami and anyone else living here will be protected somewhat while we are out." Kakashi and the others watched quietly as Naruto proceeded to add security puppets to each corner of the living room and on the ledges of the roof as well. Pretty soon there were 10 puppets strategically positioned on all sides of Tazuna's home, each ready to attack as soon as an enemy gets too close. Yujito looked around and grinned. "I think I'll add to that," she said as her hands began to glow with the chakra of Ethnibi. Ninja Art Shinikichus no Jutsu. A second later about 30 zombie samurai appeared in puffs of smoke. "Position yourself around the perimeter of this house, stay hidden and slay any enemies that approach," she commanded. The zombies nodded and took off in different directions. "Wow, I didn't know you could summon zombies," said Kakashi. "It's part of the summoning contract given to me by the Nibi," she responded. Sai, not one to be outdone, quickly drew several paintings of tigers and a dragon before skillfully tossing them in different directions. The paintings attached to different positions on the walls and glowed with chakra for a brief second. Kakashi looked at the three in front of him and said, "A bit of an overkill, don't you think?" "Nope," said Yujito with a grin. "I agree," said Sai. "If they are so stupid as to try and storm the house, then they deserve to die. Our mission is to protect Azuna and his family. I could care less about the fools trying to get to him." Kakashi just shrugged and pulled out his perverted book, causing Yujito to gasp. "Is that Icha Paradise Volume 16? Kakashi paused and chanced to look at the member of the gender that despises the book and widened his eyes in surprise when he saw a set of starry eyes. Oh, you gotta let me read that when you're done." Kakashi's sweat dropped. Sure." At Yujito's excited squeal he decided to ignore the questions bubbling up in his mind and get back to reading. Naruto on the other hand was cursing. "Fuck. A perverted female that wants to be mine. Shit. That's all I need right now," he thought as Yujito appeared behind Kakashi and peered over his shoulder with a curious cat-like expression on her face. She even had the cat-like paws instead of hands. Sai just looked on in interest. Not really know what to think in this situation. Soon Tazuna and Tsunami appeared. "Dinner is ready," said the woman with a warm smile, while Tazuna just pointed at Naruto. "It's you." Naruto just smirked. "Yes, it's me, old man." Kakashi chuckled and said, "Why don't we catch up at the dinner table, eh?" "Good idea, I'm starved," said Sai. Dinner was a pretty enjoyable affair in Naruto's opinion. Tazuna explained to his daughter how he had a brief encounter with a blonde shrimp and how the young girl Hanabi seems to have a crush on him. Tsunami thought this was very cute but was a bit unnerved by Naruto's blank stare. Sai had said something about Tazuna being dickless and that started whole 10 minutes of ranting, yelling and attempted subduement of one bridge builder. Yujito kept trying to steal Kakashi's book and a young boy named Inari kept glaring at everything around him. Dinner was already half over when Naruto's senses started going off. "Someone is coming," he said as his fingers tapped on the handle of his hammer. The others tensed up as well for 3 minutes until the front door burst open and in came 3 people. Scene change. "I don't care how stunningly sexy Sasuke-kun is without a shirt on. I'm never, ever going to train with you two psychos again. You got that? Never." "Oh, stop being such a pansy, Haruno," said Hanabi. "Shut up, brat. You two are not human. I swear. What the hell was all that? Though even if you aren't human I'd still be yours, Sasuke-kun. Just thought you should know." Sasuke groaned and said, "Can you give it a rest already?" The 3 walked into the living room completely messed up. Sasuke's shirt had been burned completely off and Hanabi was covered in soot, bruises and cuts. Sakura wasn't much better and neither was Sasuke. And what the hell is element fusion? Trying to combine fire and water. What the hell were you thinking? Hey, I almost had it. But then you had to get all of sick fangirl when the Uchiha managed to create a blade made of fire. That banshee squealer needs to die or I'll kill it myself." "What? You heard me. Both of you shut up," yelled Sasuke. The 3 looked up and saw Kakashi looking at them with a critical eye. "What were you all doing?" "Training," was Sasuke's simple reply. "More like trying to kill each other and me," yelled Sakura. Hanabi glared and began to say an insult but something else caught her eye, something more important in her eyes. "Naruto-sama." In an instant she was attached to F-puppet user, giving his midsection the strongest hug she could muster. Naruto's eyebrow started ticking and so did Yujito's. "Get off of me, Hanabi." Hanabi just buried her face deeper into his stomach and said, "You're here. Why are you here? Did you come to see how I was doing?" Huh. Naruto wrapped chakra strings around the girl and pried her off and dangled her in the air, causing her to giggle. "My new team and I are here as reinforcements to you all," he said plainly. Hanabi's smile grew a bit more until she laid eyes on Yujito. "Naruto-sama. What's she doing here?" Naruto sighed. "That is my new teammate. Her name is Yujito and I expect you two to get along." Hanabi huffed but nodded her head. "Just so long as she stays away from you. I already have enough rivals as it is." Naruto sighed while Yujito raised an eyebrow in amusement. "A little girl like you wouldn't know how to please a man of Uzumaki-kun's stature." This caused numerous gasps and one sigh from Naruto himself. "I'm 12 years old, damn it. Keep your thoughts to yourself and do not attempt anything. It's bad enough that Yugao does that." There were a few laughs and a "old hag. I'm glad she's not here" from Hanabi. Dinner proceeded relatively normal after that point, except Hanabi made it a point to be next to Naruto at all times. Yes, that night was full of joy and humor, but the next day was going to get serious. Naruto fell asleep with thoughts of new puppets and a fox that wanted to begin his lessons on runes. Chapter 13. Confrontations in the Land of Wave. Naruto stood before the Kyuubi once again with eyes of curiosity. He didn't really think the fox was actually serious when he said he would instruct him on the ancient art of runes until he was skilled enough to transfer his being into Fox Naruto. Why the demon wanted to become a living puppet was beyond him but also understandable. He himself would much rather be a living puppet than a prisoner within someone else. Oh well. He'd have to make sure to upgrade Fox Naruto before he did the transfer rune for the Kyuubi. He stepped closer to the fox and eyed him expectantly. "So what's first?" he asked. The fox chuckled wickedly and said, impatient. "Good, because I want out of the crappy ass mind ASAP." "Just get on with it," was Naruto's emotionless reply. "Insolent whelp. Anyway, the first thing you must know is that runes are extremely powerful. I believe I have told you this before. Runes are to be respected and handled with care. Treat them poorly or draw them half-assed and you will pay dearly." Naruto nodded his head. "Also, runes are activated and used with mana, not chakra." At Naruto's raised eyebrow, the Kyuubi sighed. Mana is a type of magical energy, a prior energy that existed before the creation of chakra. Every Biju has mana reserves and each specializes in one type of magic. For me it's rune magic. For the Nibi it's necromancy. Jinchuriki also have this, should the need arise. In order to harness this energy you will need my help. Seeing as you have already grown past the point of being able to develop mana reserves, I'm going to have to instill some of my own." Naruto's eyes widened a bit. "Now hold still because I'm starting." Naruto barely had time to say what before he is swept away by a tsunami of green. Sai, Yujito, Tsunami and Inari were trying to wake up Naruto when the boy's body suddenly jerked violently and began to glow green. This is unexpected, said Sai as Naruto began to float due to the energy suddenly bursting from him. Tsunami and Inari stood there frozen at what they were seeing, while Yujito stood there with wide eyes. I can't believe it. Sai looked over at his teammate and raised a questioning eyebrow. Yujito, understanding Sai's silent question, muttered so only he could hear. He's gotten his demon on, gift him with his mana. The same energy I use for my necromancy. Sai just stood there, not really understanding. Naruto-san was getting some sort of new energy from the Kyuubi. How could you get a demon to agree to such a thing? His interest in both teammates began to rise again. For 10 minutes, they watched as the green glow enshrouding Naruto increased until the light permeated the entire home and claimed all of their eardrums with a high-pitched squeal, causing Inari to cry out and Tsunami to drop to her knees until it suddenly stopped and Naruto crashed back to the bed he was using at the moment, breathing heavily and still very much unconscious. Sai looked at Yujito, and Yujito looked at Sai. It's best if we leave him here to rest, said Sai. Yujito nodded in agreement and got to her feet while helping Tsunami up. What the hell was that? Screamed Inari, earning himself a slap to the head. Watch your mouth, young man. Inari groaned and rubbed his sore head. Stupid blonde, he muttered, causing his mother to glare. Anyway, as his teammate, I apologize for any damage he may have caused, said Yujito. Tsunami just smiled and said, oh no, it's quite alright. I'm sure he has some issues to work out, so I'm not worried. Now go ahead and assist Kakashi and his team. The two nodded and gave their thanks and shunshined away. Tsunami gave one more look to the unconscious Naruto before she eased out of his room. He looked so peaceful now. Not at all like when he was awake. I wonder what he's been through. Scene change. Huff, goddamn fox, what the hell did you do? Naruto was on one knee, his left fist planted into the sodden floor beneath him and breathing very heavily. What he had just gone through was the most painful experience he had ever gone through. Fuck the beatings he used to receive. They had nothing on what he had to go through a few seconds ago. I suggest you quit bitching and pay attention. I have 9 basic rune names and their symbols to teach you. Fine. The fox sighed and looked him in the eyes. Incendia is fire, Glacies is ice, Levitas is lightning, Terra is earth, Umbra is shadow, Ventus is wind, Lux Lucis is light. There's also metal then Unda, which is water. These are the 9 elements. If you learn how to completely harness the powers of these runes, more paths will open up to you. These runes are the beginnings of all the paths that will open for you. Naruto nodded. Also, you must learn the 3 words for rune magic. Iacio, Cancer and Inficio. Those 3 mean cast, cancel and imbue respectively. These words will allow you to use any runes you may come to learn how to draw in the future. They are RuneScriber's most valued asset. Do not forget these words, for I cannot tell you them again. Naruto nodded again, his entire being was straight and attentive. This impressed the fox a bit. Now for the rune symbols themselves. Scene change. Yuigao, Hinata and Tsuchi were walking towards the market district in relative silence. Or it would have been if Yuigao wasn't constantly mumbling about cat bitches and little Hyuga brats. Something that had Tsuchi growling and contemplating whether or not he should use his new harmonica to put her in a powerful genjutsu that depicted her, Naruto and whipped cream, just to get her to shut up. He quickly dismissed that idea for reasons he dared not think about. Hinata was in a similar position, though not as extreme as her reddish pink-haired friend. She was worried for Naruto as well as Sasuke and Hanabi. She hadn't the gist of it, but apparently Naruto had a new team. Both of which were his enemies at one point. That was all she had managed to get out of Yuigao before she started sulking again. Hinata wondered how Yuigao could be so serious one second and childish the next. Sure, she could understand her feelings for Naruto, she herself had felt the same before his personality change, but still. Yuigao, perhaps it is best to think about something else. Training or food perhaps. Yuigao glared at the ex-Hyuga then said, Naruto-kun is on a mission away from the village, with an ex-Rude and an assassin that was just trying to kill him not even 5 days ago. Hinata couldn't help but sweat drop. Boy. Yuigao, I think you need to relax. You're acting like a child right now, said Tsuchi. Yuigao rounded on the boy in the wheelchair and let out a glare that could scare the Hokage. I don't trust his so-called team. Tsuchi shrunk a bit in his chair. I think we need not worry about Naruto. He's strong and I don't think the Kumo Kunoichi will try and harm him after what he did for her. This statement came from Hinata as she placed a reassuring hand on the Anbu's shoulder. Yuigao sighed and visibly calmed down. Yeah. You're right. But now I'm worried she'll seduce him. Cats are known to be frisky. Who knows what other attributes that girl has received from her demon. Overabundant lust could be one of those. BFFFFTTTT. Ha 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 ha. Tsuchi couldn't help but burst into hysterical laughter right then and there. Shut it, brat. Tsuchi just continued to laugh while Hinata sighed. None of them noticed that they were being watched. Enko frowned. Yuigao likes the boy. Well, that's not overly surprising. Damn it, I'm going to have to talk to some people. She quietly leapt off in another direction. She didn't know why she was wasting all of her time trying to find out more about the ruthless puppet using Kyuubi Jinchuriki, but she really didn't care. She had to know more about him. Especially if he could get rid of the curse on her shoulder. She once again crushed the feeling of hope that had begun to rise up. She wasn't about to hope for shit. That's not something she did. No, she got things done instead. If Naruto could get rid of the curse seal for her, then she'd have to find a way to get him to do it. She wasn't about to delude herself into thinking that all she'd have to do is approach him and ask, and he'd feel all sorry for her and agree right then and there. He wasn't that type of person, and she wasn't so pathetic as to do something like that. Damn it, I need more info. Meanwhile, Yuigao had taken off to train, leaving Hinata and Tsuchi to converse alone. Tsuchi was playing a soft melody on his harmonica while Hinata listened with a smile as she wheeled him around. You know, I never see Blondie using that sitter I gave him. He better not be slacking, said Tsuchi after a couple of minutes. Hinata giggled and said, I'm sure he's training right now and getting good at using that weapon. Tsuchi just shrugged. I just wonder what my sister will think when she eventually meets Naruto. You're sure they're going to meet? Tsuchi grinned. Damn right. I know Naruto's rep will eventually begin to spread and it will attract all sorts of attention. My sister will be one of those many people that come seeking him out. Hinata nodded, then looked up and thought. I wonder if we can be there next to him with tales of our power being told all over as well. Hee, everyone will know of us. Hinata. You okay? Hinata just continued to stare up at the clouds with a grin on her face. Scene change. Naruto was in pain. It hit him like a wave as soon as he had woken up and it flooded his body. It was going away but it still. Damn fox, he muttered as the pain in his chest faded away. He looked around confused for a second until he remembered where he was. He quickly deduced that he was in a guest bedroom and that Sai and Yujito had proceeded to Tezuna's bridge while he rested. He slowly got out of bed and stretched his sore body. Today was the day to end this mission. I wonder how good a tool Zabuza would make. This thought echoed in his mind as he got dressed and armed. He had a bridge to get to after all. But when he stepped out of his room he was met with the sight of two samurai holding blades to Tsunami's throat and one more holding Inari by the throat. How the hell did you get past the defenses my team and I set up? Was the question he wanted to blurt out but he didn't. The surprise of the three men still showed on their faces, so he had time to strike. Without a word he launched several senbon needles at the three men and hit the right pressure points. They fell to the ground unconscious and paralyzed. Then without another word he drew his hammer and brought it down 3 times, crushing the skulls of his victims and splattering Inari and Tsunami with blood. Holy shit. Yelled Inari while Tsunami just gasped. Naruto looked over at the two and said, apologies for the blood. He then pulled out a scroll and sealed everything inside of it, including the splattered blood. There now, stay inside until we get back. He then turned and leapt out of the door. Inari just continued to stare for a few more minutes until he spoke up with a shaky voice. He killed Gatu's men. Just like that. Gone. Tsunami could only nod. Inari's face went through several sudden revelations. Perhaps. There was hope. Scene change. Naruto faced Izuna's home and sent a wave of chakra through the area and nodded in satisfaction when the security puppets activated. He figured that in their haste. Sai and him forgot to activate their respective security after installing them. He had no idea where Yujito's zombie samurai were. After that was done he turned and dashed off towards the bridge, unsealing Danzo and Mizuki. Scene change. There were several levels of bad in Kakashi's mind. Things were annoying when they arrived at the bridge and numerous workers approached Izuna and quit, fearing for their lives. He became tense when a mist started rolling in at an unnatural rate. He became on edge when the agonized screams of the rest of Tezuna's workers started echoing through the mist. He became worried when the mist cleared, revealing the unconscious and seriously injured forms of the workers crumpled about on the bridge. And he finally dubbed it a bad day when the mist cleared, revealing a man wielding a huge zanbatsu and a young man that looked like a woman. Kakashi. We meet again, said Zabuza with that grin of his hidden from behind the bandages. Kakashi got into his fighting stance and said, yes. It appears so. It was at this moment that Yujito and Sai appeared, causing Zabuza to glare. Called for backup, huh? Feh. It won't make any difference to me. I'll take you all on. Sai tensed and pulled out his brush, ink and scroll. Wait, said Kakashi. You and Yujito take on Zabuza's apprentice. I'll take on Zabuza with Sasuke. Hanabi and Sakura guard Tezuna. The group nodded and assumed their positions. Sai and Yujito rushed at Zabuza's partner who met them halfway with an impressive display of speed. The nin clashed a senbon against Sai's knife, while Yujiro threw a few shuriken with deadly accuracy. The nin ducked under them but was met with a foot to the face curtsy of Yujiro, then a fist from Sai. The nin was sent flying back to Zabuza. An impressive brats you have working for you, Kakashi. I didn't think mere genin could have that level of skill. Kakashi sweat dropped as Hanabi screamed. Did you not pay attention the last time we fought Sasuke and I nearly killed you? And Yujiro-san and I aren't genin, Sai. Zabuza frowned. Hanabi glared but was calmed down by Sakura placing a hand on her shoulder. Sasuke looked at Kakashi and Kakashi looked back. 2 seconds later both were clashed up against Zabuza's blade. Kaiten ga Kyoku no Jutsu. Zabuza was surprised by Sasuke's action and therefore was blasted back by the large fireball that erupted from the Uchiha's mouth. He had little time to recover as Kakashi appeared and slammed a foot into his abdomen, sending him into the water. Kakashi leapt after him, but Sasuke stayed where he was, looking a bit sheepish. I still don't know how to walk on water. Kakashi nodded and continued his assault on Zabuza, or he would have had it not been for the giant tornado of water that slammed into him and sent him back to the bridge. Kakashi sighed and pulled him his headband up, revealing the Sharingan. This caused Zabuza to smirk and say, Suiten Kurigaku no Jutsu. The area was quickly covered up in a thick white fog. Shit, said Kakashi. Zabuza chuckled and said, that damnable eye won't work on me twice. I've figured out its secret. You're dead, Kakashi. Kakashi began to feel a bit worried now. Meanwhile Sai and Yujiro were still going at it with Zabuza's partner. This ninja was strong. And his speed was superb. You cannot win. I can tell already that both of you are not at your best. From looking at you I can tell that you women are injured and you with the black hair has not seen a fight for a while. Probably locked away in prison somewhere. Sai showed no visible reaction, while Yujiro seemed to get angry. She crouched over as purple-black chakra began to seep from her body. You know not who you are facing, fool, she said as the chakra began to swirl around her and grant her great strength. The nin froze but then went into overdrive preparing a jutsu. Whatever this woman was, she was powerful. The killing intent alone was messing with his mind. He felt like he was staring the Shinigami itself in the face. Yujiro stood back up and smirked with slitted cat eyes. Zabuza's apprentice finished his jutsu, causing a dome of mirrors made of ice to appear around the pair. I see I should not take you lightly then. Not even with your enhancements will you be able to match my speed. The two then watched as he melted into one of his mirrors and brandished several senbon needles. Sai looked at Yujiro and said, I trust you can track him. Yujiro smirked and nodded. That was a second before both of them were riddled with senbon needles. I told you. My speed is unparalleled while I'm in these mirrors. Sai pulled a few needles from his arms, then proceeded to gather chakra into his legs. I have faced faster opponents than you. Yu-Gao-san would be an example. And with that he vanished, and so did Yujiro. Scene change. Sakura was a bit scared when Yujiro released a bit of the Nibi's chakra. Like everyone else present, she was there the night she fought Naruto. But she didn't get much time to think because Hanabi suddenly shoved her out of the way with a yell of look out. A millisecond before several shuriken embedded into the spot where she just was. She looked at the projectile weapons for a few seconds before she looked up to see that Tazuna was hiding behind an earth wall. Naruto, get up already. Yelled Hanabi. We're getting attacked. Sakura gasped and leapt to her feet. It was true. Hanabi had her back against the earth wall, trying not to get ran through by one of the demon brothers. His face was wrapped in bandages and his left arm was still covered in cuts and bruises. You little bitch. You'll pay for killing my brother. The Chunin leapt at Hanabi, intent on running her through with his claws. Hanabi's surprising and very impressive skills had caught the man's brother off guard and he ended up getting simultaneously dismembered by wind blades and incinerated by fire. It was an element fusion Kaiten. Sakura remembered that day vividly and for a few hours after that wondered how a 9-year-old girl could kill so ruthlessly. Sakura could only stare in open shock as Hanabi gave a yell of Kaiten no Ho Shuriken. The man never stood a chance. Hanabi's body exploded with chakra as she started to spin rapidly. But at the same time the chakra turned into a swirling vortex of orange flames. Hanabi was truly a genius with the Jaiken, or more specifically, the Kaiten. She had come up with a style that involves fusing elements and weapons with her Kaitens and therefore making her overall style extremely dangerous and highly unpredictable. Without the limits and restrictions placed on by the Hyuga clan and her periods of watching Naruto training with his Hyuga puppet Yoshino, she was free to study and integrate whatever she wanted into her fighting style. And the results were a devastating array of different heavenly spins. The Kiri Chunin slammed into the superheated chakra dome full force and was thrown back. Before he could even begin to yell out in pain, about 16 shuriken exploded from the fire dome, each one glowing red from the heat. 3 found their target and melted right through his body like a hot knife through butter. The man screamed in agony as he fell into the water. The Nabi stopped spinning and the fire chakra vanished. She gave a smirk in Sakura's direction and said, "Get your act together, Haruno." Sakura glared. "Shut up, brat." The Nabi merely continued to smirk. She felt so superior right now. She turned back to Tazuna and noticed that he was shivering in fear, with a red-hot shuriken a mere inch away from his manhood. The Nabi sweat dropped and said, "My apologies, Tazuna-san." Tazuna responded by yelling, "Watch where you throw those things." "Hey, I said my apologies. That doesn't excuse the fact that you nearly castrated me." Sakura sighed and turned her attention back to Yujito and Sai, just in time to see Zabuza's apprentice rush from a mirror at Yujito with an ice version of Zabuza's sword. "Asp. Look out." She yelled, but Yujito could not react in time. The masked nin dashed at the Nibi Jinchuriki with the intention of running her through from behind. But something happened. Just as the sword was about to plunge into Yujito's back, a large lion made of ink latched onto the blade. "Please do not forget that you have more than one opponent," said Sai a second before he vanished. The fake hunter nin had little time to react before a short sword danced across his chest. He leapt back with a hiss of pain before blending back into one of his mirrors. U2 or STR, he was cut off by a black-purple chakra-covered fist slamming into his face and throwing him several yards away, the mirror he was hiding in shattered like common glass. As he skipped across the ground he couldn't help but feel worried. He was failing Zabuza. Sai and Yujito stared down at him, their breath shallow and ragged, a testimony to the inhibitions on their strength. "If upper to eye," said Yujito with a glare. The boy shakily got to his feet. "No. I am Zabuza-sama's tool. I will not fail him." Yujito scoffed while Sai conjured up a large ink eagle. "Suit yourself." Scene change. Zabuza blocked a strike from Kakashi while simultaneously burying his heel into the solarplex of Sasuke. "Really now? Is that the best you two can do?" He taunted as he ducked under the jab from Kakashi. Sasuke jumped to his feet while panting. He couldn't see shit in this mist and it was making him angry. He was mentally cursing himself and all things related to water. Fucking damn it. Damn missing Kirinin. He pulled out several kunai and a length of ninja wire. If he listened carefully enough he might be able to locate him. Finally he caught the sound of footsteps heading to the left and smirked. There. Without a second though he hurled his shuriken attached to wires in that direction. Zabuza was about to cleave the unsuspecting Kakashi in half with his Zanbatsu when he felt the wires wrap around him and de-tighten to the point that they were drawing blood. "Shit. I looks like I got you." Zabuza scowled as Sasuke emerged from the mist glaring with a spinning Sharingan and a smirk. "I was only half positive that I hadn't snagged Kakashi instead of you. I'm glad I got the right guy," he said causing Kakashi to sweat drop. "Now," said Sasuke as he started flipping through hand signs. "Prepare to die by my newest jutsu. Element Fusion Art. Electric Fire Dragon Jutsu." Where Sasuke had learned lightning abilities would forever be a question running through Kakashi's mind. But it wouldn't start running through his mind until later because at the moment everything within a 5-meter radius was about to get super obliterated by Sasuke's jutsu. "Damn it, Sasuke, restrain yourself," yelled Kakashi as a massive fire dragon coursing with electricity blasted from Sasuke's mouth with the force of a hurricane and raced down the wires and at the wide-eyed Zabuza. Both Konoha shinobi had to leap back in order to avoid the intense heat and the random strikes of electricity. From a distance, Yujito, Sai and Haku paused when the bridge rumbled because of Sasuke's jutsu, while Hanabi smirked at the gaping Sakura and Tazuna. "What was that?" asked Haku. "That was impressive, Uchiha," muttered Yujito. Meanwhile Kakashi was staring at Sasuke with a bit of scolding and shock. "Sasuke, just what the hell was that? And why the hell don't you warn a guy before you use something like that?" The Uchiha was about to respond with an arrogant smirk when Zabuza burst from the water with a few burns on his body and a slightly melted Kubikiri Haucho. "Brat. I'll kill you. Kinjutsu. Tsururyaba." Sasuke and Kakashi were caught by surprise and therefore could do little to defend against the Mist Nin's attack. Zabuza swung his sword down with great force, causing a huge dragon made of water to spring forth from it and flood that entire area with water cold enough to freeze blood in seconds. Kakashi and Sasuke were swept off of their feet and sent towards Haku, Sai and Yujito. The water was like a powerful river. No one knew Zabuza had this kind of power. Impressive, Zabuza-san," said Sai with no real emotion as he used his chakra to stare it to the bridge. Zabuza looked positively enraged. This group of arrogant Gakus dare mock him. The demon of the Mist Village. They were scum in his eyes. They were nothing. His anger began to rise and the grip on his weapon increased in strength. "Haku. Come here." Haku immediately vanished and reappeared by Zabuza's side, but Yujito appeared along with him and sank her Nibi chakra-covered fist into his stomach and sent him further up the bridge. "Arg." Zabuza swung his blade at Yujito with a frustrated scream, but she avoided it with the grace only a feline could possess. Again they mock him. Haku had recovered and enshrouded himself in ice armor, a smaller replica of Zabuza's blade forming again in his hands. He looked at Yujito and vanished. "I won't allow you to harm Zabuza-sama," he yelled as he slashed her across the back, getting a loud hiss from her. He was about to strike again when 2 feet slammed into his face and sent him skidding back. Sai and Sasuke were poised and ready to keep fighting. Sasuke with the ever-arrogant smirk while Sai just looked neutral. Kakashi himself had recovered as well and was glaring at Zabuza. "You see Zabuza, you cannot win this one. You're outnumbered and outgunned. Give up." Zabuza scowled and was about to shout out his refusal to give up when a cry of ice release. 100, Javelin Jutsu. Rang out from above. "Zabuza-sama. Guard yourself," yelled Haku a second before everyone was assaulted by hundreds of ice spears coming down upon them like rain. "Shit," yelled Yujito and Sasuke at the same time. Take cover," yelled Kakashi. Numerous counters to Haku's mass assault jutsu were then activated in order to preserve their lives. "Izuna-san. Haruno, get behind me. Kaiten," yelled Hanabi as she began to spin. The blue rotating dome of chakra enveloped all 3 of them and deflected the spears that came their way. Yujito crouched down and said, "Shiny Kuchius no Jutsu," before she slammed her hands into the ground, causing an overhead disc made of pressed-together skeletons to appear in a puff of green mist above them. The spears bounced harmlessly off of the disc, causing Zabuza to curse loudly. "Damn it, why won't any of you die?" he yelled. He was about to charge when something suddenly burst from his chest, spraying blood all over a gasping Haku. Zabuza could only look down in shock as a metal spike slowly slid back out of his torso. "They won't die. Because you're weaker than they are." That voice. It was even colder than his was at times. Such an emotionless, unfeeling voice, one that actually sent shivers down his spine. Though the shivers could also be attributed to shock due to the hole in his chest. What? Zabuza turned around to face his new foe, only to lock eyes with the coldest blue eyes he'd ever seen. Eyes that should belong to only the oldest of battle-hardened warriors. He felt his own eyes widening in shock when he saw that it was merely a boy with yellow hair. His face was in an uninterested scowl as he twitched his fingers, causing the puppet designed to look like an old man to retract the rope spear jutting from his right hand. Haku was yelling Zabuza's name in fear. While a couple of the Konohinin such as Yujito and Hanabi were excitably calling out the name Naruto. Zabuza clutched at the hole in his chest and suddenly felt his vision go blurry. "You are jeopardizing our mission, Mamachi Zabuza, former swordsman from Kurigakure no Sado, and for that you die." "No," yelled Haku as he appeared from a mirror and tried to take his head off with his ice sword. The blade was caught suddenly by another puppet. This one swirled with a tainted power as it held the blade with one hand. Haku gasped when the puppet snapped the blade like it was nothing, then jammed its clawed hand into his chest. "An ice bloodline limit. You'll make an excellent tool," said Naruto as Haku struggled to keep breathing. "However, you first need to die to become just that. You and that fool master of yours." Haku tried with the last of his strength to form a jutsu, but Naruto caught on and grabbed his hammer with his free hand. "It's too late for you," he said before his hammer slammed into Haku's temple, killing him instantly. Naruto wasted no time and he directed both puppets to descend upon the wavering form of Zabuza, Mizuki slashing his throat and Danzo slashing his spine with a kunai. The only ones not affected by such effective killing were everyone but Tazuna and Sakura. Both were just gaping at the boy as he proceeded to seal both bodies into scrolls. Sasuke walked up to him and said, "PFFT show off. You only took them down so easily because we weakened them for you." Naruto shrugged and said, "That is a fact that is already known, however it matters not." Sasuke gave another smirk and headed over towards Sakura and Tazuna. "Naruto-sama, that was amazing," yelled Hanabi just to get on Sakura's nerves as she collided with Naruto's torso in a tight hug, not even remotely aware of how close she came to getting a kunai jammed in her neck out of reflex. Naruto sighed as the Hyuga girl continued to smother herself in Naruto's chest. He was still a bit sore from the Kyuubi's earlier actions. "Hanabi, let go of me." She was just about to respond when the sound of a cane slamming into the cement echoed from the end of the bridge. "Well, it seems that Zabuza and his little goon couldn't cut it. Sai, you just can't find good henchmen anymore. Oh well. At least they're dead now and I don't have to worry about killing them now." The group turned and saw a short man wearing sunglasses and a business suit standing at the end of the bridge, accompanied by a large army of thugs. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he pried Hanabi off of him. "Are you Gatu?" he asked. He was not one to waste time. The man smirked and said, "And what if I am?" A second later he fell to the ground with a kunai in the back of his head as Naruto appeared behind him, much to the shock of the hired thugs. "Then you die," he said tonelessly. The men that were with Gatu could only stare for a few seconds before someone yelled, "Hey. That was our meal ticket." "Hey yeah. So what are you gonna do about it?" "I say we go and plunder the village for all it's worth." "Yeah." However, their little plan was interrupted by the arrival of Inari leading the villagers of Wave. "Take another step and we'll kill you ourselves," yelled the boy as he pointed a crossbow at the group. Yujiro summoned a dozen skeletons, Sai drew up a few wolves, and Kakashi created several shadow clones. Naruto himself rejoined his comrades and gave a sadistic smirk towards the group. Common sense finally overrode their greed and caused the group to flee, not wanting anything to do with Wave ever again, and before long there wasn't a single bandit left. The group finally relaxed. Inari looking at Naruto with a look that clearly said, "I admire you." Hanabi grabbed his arm and grinned at Yujiro who huffed and walked ahead. "Let's go get some rest," said Kakashi. Time skip. The villagers of Wave were gathered at the end of the completed bridge to see the group off. "Hey Naruto, make sure to visit again sometime," said Inari excitably while Tsunami nodded in agreement. Naruto gave Inari a slight nod and said, "I will consider it." Izuna stepped forward and gave each one of them a handshake. "Thank you all for everything. We will always be in your department." Kakashi gave one of his eye smiles and said, "Just be sure to pay us when you can, and we'll call it even." Tizuna grunted out a "greedy ninja," but in a playful manner. Sai and Yujiro stood off to the side. Although they contributed, they still felt a bit out of place. Sasuke was of course basking in the attention while Hanabi was trying to get Naruto to be a bit more open. Sakura was over by Sasuke trying to get his affection. All in all, it was a pretty happy mood. "Well then, take care Tizuna-san," said Kakashi as he and the rest of the Konohinin turned and began to head out. As they did, Tizuna eyed Naruto's back. "That boy is the one who killed Gatu and therefore deserves to have this bridge named after him. The Great Naruto Bridge. Named for a hero who knows not yet his greatness." Tsunami giggled. "That was very deep too, San." "Hey, I have my moments." "So anyone disagree?" But no one said anything. Tizuna smiled. The Great Naruto Bridge is complete. There were some cheers. Scene change. As the group exited the bridge on the other side, Hanabi suddenly spotted something and dashed to the side and onto the shore. The group watched surprised as she approached the body of one of the demon brothers. He looked like he'd been in the water for a while. Hanabi grabbed the man's clawed gauntlet that still had the long chain dangling from it and placed it securely on her own arm. "I'm gonna create a very cool Kaiten using this weapon," she said with a smile in Naruto's direction. Said blonde just polished his hammer while thinking about his own new tools, a powerful swordsman, 2 lower-level swordsmen and a bloodline user. He couldn't wait to finish them. His last thoughts before he exited the wave were, another bloodline puppet. "Yes, I think this one will do just fine." Haku. Chapter 14. Return to Konoha. The trip back to Konoha was interesting in Kakashi's eyes. Never in his life had he met such a constantly personality-changing group of people. Hanabi went from being quiet, serious and arrogant to a squealing hyper little girl when Naruto was around. Thus was evident in the fact that she had her arm clutched around his and kept saying, "Play with me Naruto-sama." And despite the fact that Hanabi's request sounded totally perverted, he knew she didn't mean it like that. She just wanted his attention and was competing with Yujiro for said attention. Yujiro intrigued him. Who knew there were female fans of Icha Icha out there, because he certainly didn't. At the moment she had his book and was nose deep in it. Though she did occasionally bump her hip into Naruto's and say, "Oops, my apologies Uzumaki-kun," which would get Hanabi to start yelling and declaring that Naruto-sama hated Yujiro's guts, so leave him alone, which in turn would cause Yujiro to scoff and tell the girl to stop dreaming, and that Uzumaki-kun would never sully his hands by touching some little exiled Hyuga girl, which would get Hanabi to yell loudly and charge the Nibi Jinchuriki with her new gauntlet. Naruto himself was taking all of this in stride, whether it was because he was distracted with thoughts of new puppets, of just because he was used to this and didn't have the energy to get both girls away from him. Whatever the reason, Kakashi admired his patience. Right up until Naruto jammed a senbon in both girls' necks, knocking them out. "God damn it," growled the boy as he continued on. Kakashi's sweat dropped. Then face planted when Yujiro sprang up a second later and said, "Ooh, I didn't know you were into that sort of thing Uzumaki-kun, but I must inform you that sleeping drugs are useless against me. However, you can still use me as a hostage while I'm still conscious. It's no big deal." Kakashi slung Hanabi over his shoulder and continued on his way with the group following him. Sai and Sasuke didn't bond. The exact opposite of that happened in fact. As soon as the Uchiha found out that Sai was part of Rudy, declared loudly and angrily, "You bastard. How dare you show your face to me? Fight me now or die a swift and messy death." Half an hour of jutsus and ink followed soon after. Sakura. Well. She just stayed close to Kakashi and examined the special opnin shyly, still trying to determine if Naruto really was the monster her mother constantly yapped on about. Then suddenly did a 180 and shouted at the top of her lungs, "Go get him, Sasuke-kun. Rip him to shreds." When said Uchiha and Sai started fighting. All in all, Kakashi was greatly relieved when the gates to Konoha came into view. Izumo and Kitetsu were once again stationed at the gates when the group appeared in front of them. They watched as Naruto walked past them without a word, Yujito following and stashing Kakashi's icha into her weapon's pouch. Then they saw Sasuke throw a punch at Sai, just as Sai's foot slammed into his head, both flew off in opposite directions from the force of their blows, while Sakura screamed loudly for her eternal love. "As you can see, we're back and the mission was a success," said Kakashi tiredly to the two Chunin, who merely nodded with sweat drops and motioned for him to proceed into the village. "Wow," was all Izumo could say. Scene change. Naruto was halfway to his home when the memory suddenly hit him. He spun around and glared into Yujito's surprised orbs and said, "You're going to help me rebuild my house?" Yujito chuckled nervously and said, "Yeah, of course." Naruto grunted and spun back around. He wanted to get this done as soon as possible so he could convert Zabuza, Haku, and the two would-be samurai into puppets. But when he and Yujito got there, both were surprised to find the place already rebuilt. The complex looked as good as new and even improved upon in a few places. "It looks like they already finished it," he said as he turned back to Yujito. "But do not think you are off of the hook yet, woman." Before Yujito could respond, several shuriken embedded into the ground at her feet. Both Naruto and the ex-Kumo Kunoichi looked up and found none other than Yugao on the roof glaring down at Yujito. "What the hell do you think you're doing here?" she growled. Yujito merely smirked that infamous cat smirk and linked an arm with Naruto. "I'm his teammate now, so I get to spend lots of time with him." The purple-haired Anbu vanished with a burst of inhuman speed and reappeared with a katana at Yujito's neck. "Only during missions, bitch. Until then I don't trust you enough to leave you with Naruto-kun, so beat it." She then leaned over and planted a kiss on Naruto's neck. "It's good to have you back, by the way. I hope you like what the two Hyugas and I managed to do with the place." Naruto merely grunted and stepped into the apartment complex turned huge house. "Don't kill each other," was all he said as he disappeared around a corner. Yugao glared back at Yujito and said, "I'll give you to the count of 3 to leave, and I'm cutting your damn fingers off." Yujito's smirk only grew as Yugao proceeded to count down. Scene change. Naruto did indeed like what was done with the place. The walls were all freshly painted and repaired, the roof no longer had cracks in it, and the empty rooms no longer smelled like old folks and embalming fluid. He was quite impressed. They even managed to carpet the floors. Weapons were displayed on every wall, and puppets patrolled the halls endlessly. Though numerous security seals and puppets were missing or broken. He'd have to remedy that. He turned to a door marked eating quarters and entered without a thought. Then became surprised when he laid eyes on an area that obviously used to be 4 rooms converted, combined and transformed into a large kitchen. 4 stoves lined the walls with small counters in between them, a large sink sat at the right of the stoves, and a large round table lined with 5 chairs sat in the middle of the kitchen where Hinata and Neji were drinking tea. "Hello Naruto," said Hinata quietly when she noticed the blonde looking around at the kitchen. Hope you like what we've done." Naruto looked around for a few more seconds and nodded. "Impressive," he said. Hinata smiled, then a loud explosion sounded somewhere from outside, causing Neji to spill tea everywhere in alarm as he leapt to his feet. "What the hell was that?" "Another explosion." Naruto sighed and said, "Yujito and Yugao are fighting. It should be over in a second." The 3 sat and waited as the explosions continued for another 5 minutes before suddenly coming to a stop. "And now we wait for a few seconds," said Naruto as he sipped a glass of his own tea. Exactly 6 seconds later there was a knock at the door. Naruto sighed, got to his feet and went to the door. When he pulled it open he was unsurprised to see Sarutobi with both females slung over his shoulder and a large company of Anbu. The Hokage looked exasperated as he handed both unconscious females to the puppeteer. "I think these belong to you, Naruto. Please refrain from letting them fight over you in the middle of the village." Naruto sighed and took the 2, nearly falling over from their combined weight but managing to stay on his feet. "I'll be sure to inform them, Hokage Jiji," he said. The Hokage smiled and ruffled Naruto's hair. "Good. I'll see you later, Naruto." Naruto nodded. "Damn demon, keep your pets on shorter leashes," muttered one of the Anbu, only to have a fist smash violently into his face, courtesy of the Hokage himself. "Watch your mouth full before I kill you myself," he said. The other ninja looked stunned. "Anyway Naruto, I want you and your team to come to my office later." Naruto merely grunted and nodded before turning around and re-entering his home. He took 2 steps when someone knocked on his door again. Pushing aside his annoyance, he placed the unconscious women on the hallway floor and reopened the door. To find Kakashi with Hanabi still slung over his shoulder. I think this belongs to you. He said lazily as he handed the girl to the puppeteer. Naruto merely nodded and turned back into his complex. Oh, and can I get my book back? I'm not done reading it yet. Naruto sighed and pointed to Yujito. It's in her weapons pouch. Take it. He said. Kakashi seemed a bit hesitant, but he paid little attention to it. Neji and Hinata entered the hall still drinking tea to see what was going on just in time to see Kakashi take the book out of Yujito's kunai pouch and shunshin out of there as fast as possible. Naruto pointed to Hinata and said, take her to her room while I deal with these two. Hinata nodded and carefully took Hanabi from his hands and headed to the young girl's rebuilt bedroom. So how was your mission? Asked Neji. Naruto gave a slight smirk and said, I've gained 2 powerful new tools and 2 more security guards. Neji nodded and headed back into the kitchen. There was not much to say. One would say that Naruto has changed. 2 months ago no one would dare approach him. People only had bad things to say about him and everyone cringed in fear when they heard his name spoken. Now though the boy seemed more relaxed. Many doubted he noticed it himself, but the people of Konoha did. He was more approachable and was not so quick to bury a kunai in your skull if you insulted him. Some believed that he was just biding his time. That a demon couldn't change its nature while others knew it was because of his growing group of companions. Most noticed most of this change after his fight with the Kumo Jinchuriki. Instead of killing her like he would usually have, he spared her, took her to the hospital, and even went to visit her while she was being held in prison. Rumors spread all over Konoha about Naruto and for once not all of them were bad. So when he crouched down to wake up Yujito and Yuigao, it was unsurprising to see his eyes take on a near invisible but still slightly there warmth as he spoke. Wake up you two. We have some things to talk about and now. He gently shook the two until they both snapped their eyes open at the same time. Huh? Where am I? What happened? Asked Yuigao as she tried to shake the cobwebs out of her brain. Yujito on the other hand grinned and shot up, grabbing Naruto in a tight hug and saying, now this I can get used to. Waking up with an Adonis's face looking down at me. Hey. Let go of him this instant bitch. Yujito merely smirked, causing Yuigao to yell and charge. Only too loudly as her abdomen collided with Naruto's arm, which proceeded to wrap tightly around her waist. Yuigao was about to protest until she saw his ice blue eyes shining with anger. Naruto turned to stare at Yujito in the same way. Now listen up, he began in a low and deadly sounding voice. Learn to get along or I'll make you learn. Yujito is going to be staying here now and Yuigao you had better accept that. I will not have this place getting destroyed again and your constant fighting over me gets on my nerves. Do I make myself clear? When both females nodded Naruto released Yuigao. Good. Yujito, find a room and make it yours. And with that he was gone. Wow, said Yujito with wide eyes. I know. He's such an intimidating guy isn't he? Said Yuigao with eyes full of attraction. Yujito smiled and said, all the more reason to make him mine. Yuigao glared but said nothing else. Humph, she said as she headed to her own room, leaving Yujito to tour the place. Naruto was quite pleased to see that his room had also been repaired and that all of his puppet-making tools had been organized and arranged on his walls. Yuigao, Neji and Hinata had done a wonderful job at repairing the place and it made him glad to know that he wasn't going to have to waste time making a suitable spot for making his puppets. Without a word he took off his cloak and revealed his bare upper body. He noted that his hammer was still stained with the blood of the samurai from Wave, but paid it little mind as he took that off as well. His body was covered in storage seals for the weapons he used for his metal hailstorm attack. An attack he suddenly realized that would suit Hanabi more. He made a mental note to ask her if she'd like to have the attack. He certainly saw no more use for it himself. There was also the sitter Suchi had left him. That was another weapon he suddenly realized he had little use for. Though it was obviously useful it didn't fit his fighting style well. He made another mental note to fix Suchi's legs whether he wanted them fixed or not, then give him back his weapon. He noticed his other puppets, Yoshino, Fox Naruto and Onitenshi hanging on the wall. They were still in need of repairs. He sighed as he released Danzo and Mizuki and hung them on the wall as well next to his beetle armor. He had a lot of work to do. He started off by emptying the seals on his body of all weapons stored inside of them before he wet down a towel and wiped the seals away. Then he pulled out the 2 storage scrolls and unsealed the bodies of Haku, Zabuza and the 2 samurai. He showed no reaction at all to the sight of the corpses and immediately went to work by summoning 3 shadow clones and pulling all of the necessary tolls to him and his copies with chakra strings. He had a special plan for Zabuza and Haku, especially since he didn't really know much about Zabuza's techniques other than the Kurigakur, the Suryudan and his Kenjutsu. Haku's Hyutan bloodline he knew a lot about and he figured with a sadistic smile that instead of having 2 strong puppets, he would have one that possessed both of their abilities. Yes, this was going to be interesting indeed. He summoned more clones as an afterthought and said, "Repair Fox Naruto, Yoshino and Onitenshi as well." The clones nodded, just as reaction-less as the original, and went to work. Scene change. Vegito, when she found the training grounds, became ecstatic. The place was so well advanced she couldn't wait to try it out. Uzumaki-kun's home was the most exciting place she had ever been in. Puppets were everywhere waiting to strike. A few of them did strike actually, and her cat-like grace and immunity to poisons had saved her from a gruesome death, though eventually the puppets stopped their assault, apparently satisfied that she had no ill intentions. Either way, during her tour she had found several unoccupied rooms, a room that belonged to Neji, one that belonged to Hinata, and she found Hanabi asleep in her room with a demon brother's gauntlet still on her arm. She found the kitchen and numerous bathrooms. She also saw that all of the walls had weapons on them, and she couldn't help but admire some of them. They were obviously made or stolen by Uzumaki-kun himself. She wondered if he would care if she took that blood-red scythe hanging on the wall. Uzumaki-kun was a genius. Both she and the Nibi had agreed on that. She was just about to turn and exit the dojo when a voice spoke up from behind her. "I see you've taken the liberty of touring our home. Tell me, what do you think?" Vegito turned around and locked eyes with the pale lavender ones of Neji. He was standing there with his arms crossed and staring with a slight smirk. Vegito smirked back and said, "I love it. You guys sure have a nice place." "No thanks to you," was Neji's reply. Vegito shrugged. "It's in the past now." Neji seemed to contemplate on his answer before he shrugged and drew two kunai. "I'm looking for a sparring partner. My sensei has informed my team and I that we will be participating in the Chunin exams in a few weeks. And you want to practice with me?" Neji shrugged again. "I see no reason why not. Besides, I can see the desire for a fight in your eyes. You might as well spar with me." Vegito smiled and grabbed the red scythe off of the wall. "Uzumaki-kun won't care, will he?" Neji shook his head. "No. Especially since I'm the one who found that weapon." Vegito squealed with girlish delight and leapt at the ex-Hyuga. "Well then, let's get started." Scene change. Sarutobi sighed as he went over the mission report given by Kakashi. It turned out to be a success thanks to Naruto and his team. He smiled slightly at that. Naruto's skill was very impressive. He wondered if Naruto would accept his team arrangements for long. He knew the boy didn't really care at the moment, and he knew that Naruto seemed interested in both Vegito and Sai. However, he also knew that Naruto liked to be alone. But then again, Naruto has accepted several people into his home, so who knows? He'd figure it out later. For now, he'd just finish signing the documents on his desk, then he'd send for Naruto's team. Time skip. Hanabi awoke to a slight rumble of her bed. Huh? What happened? Where am I? She rubbed the sleep from her eyes and looked around, trying to guess where she might be when she recognized the familiar surroundings of her own room. She gave a slight smile. It was good to be home. Suddenly her bed rumbled again. What the heck was that? She questioned as she got out of bed. She activated her Byakugan to try and see if there was a specific source to the rumbling, and saw that indeed there was. It was in the dojo. Neji and the cat girl. They're sparring. Wait, since when is she allowed in here? She watched as Neji ducked under a swing of a scythe, then leap up and fire a huge beam of chakra from his palm, causing another rumble as it slammed into the ground. Hanabi gasped. "Neji can't do that, no way." She was so enthralled in the battle between her cousin and the Nibi Jinchuriki that she never heard Hinata come in until she spoke. "Hanabi-chan, hey." Hanabi had spun around, throwing several shuriken as she did so and nearly taking Hinata's eyes out. "Oops, sorry." Hinata took a couple of deep breaths before she spoke again. "Anyway. I've been informed that Yujito-san will be living here from now on and that Naruto wants you, Yugao and her to all get along. He also said something about a senbon in the neck, but I'm not sure." Hinata suppressed a smile as she exited the room. Hanabi was no doubt getting ready to head down to the dojo to join Neji in fighting Yujito. Everything went on quite normally for the next couple of days. No one had seen hide or hair of Naruto the entire time. Yujito and Neji were still in the dojo along with Hanabi and Yugao and Sasuke Tsuchi, and surprisingly Sai had stopped by for a visit. Though there was a lot of tension whenever Sasuke and Sai were in the same room. There had also been a small group of rowdy drunk villagers trying to attack and burn down the complex, saying the demon and his little lackeys and whores deserved death. Naturally, they were dealt with only mortal injuries but no deaths, as long as they got to the hospital in time. Finally, in the middle of the third day, Naruto stepped out of his room covered in blood and smelling like something straight out of something's ass. He had a satisfied smirk on his face and two puppets slung over his shoulders. They were the two samurai from Wave. He said nothing as he went to the front of the apartment complex and proceeded to set up the two puppets as guards and villagers passing by dared not say anything. Finally, when he was done and making sure the puppets were functioning correctly, he headed back into the complex, back to his room and to his shower. Hinata peeked into the room and saw a huge mess of blood and persevered organs in jars of embalming fluid, along with Zabuza's massive blade and several other weapons that glowed with strange symbols. A hammer, a katana, a kusurigama, a bow staff, an ajanata, a spear, a clawed gauntlet, a scythe and a giant 4-point Fuma shuriken. The hammer glowed with a tan symbols that looked like hills or mountains. The katana glowed with a blue wave-looking symbols, the kusarigama glowed with black smoky and very ninja seal-looking symbols, the bow staff glowed with turquoise snowflake-shaped symbols, the naginata glowed with white symbols that looked like blowing winds, the spear glowed with lightning bolt-shaped symbols. The gauntlet glowed with bright yellow symbols that looked like rays from the sun, the scythe glowed with red flame symbols, and the shuriken glowed with silver indistinguishable symbols. Each weapon was very beautiful, and they radiated a power that was different than chakra. Hinata couldn't help but stare at the weapons. This is how Naruto found her 20 minutes later when he exited his bathroom. Impressive, aren't they? He said with a smirk, causing her to squeak in surprise and jump. Sorry. I couldn't help it. They were so beautiful and… She was cut off by Naruto placing a finger on her lips. There is no need for all of that apologizing. You were merely fascinated. I am not going to attack you. Hinata nodded. Why yes. Naruto nodded as well and used chakra strings to gently push her out of the room. Now if you'll excuse me, I have to get dressed and clean up the mess. Hinata blushed and went to apologize again, but a stern look from the boy forced her to stop. Why yes. Well. Goodbye then Naruto. Naruto merely grunted and closed the door. Hinata wordlessly made her way back to her room. What were those strange symbols? Perhaps Yuga or his teammate would know. She had never seen such beautiful symbols before. One thing was for sure. She was going to be spending the whole day thinking about it. Naruto examined the clothing in front of him with a frown. His orange shorts were covered in blood and worn out beyond repair. He definitely needed something new. And his trench coat was messed up as well. It was still in relatively good condition, but it was too bulky and it too would be better off somewhere else. I'll have to get something new. It wasn't like Naruto didn't have new sets of clothing. He just never really saw the need to change all of the time. He washed his shorts and underwear every day at least twice a day, and he always kept clean, so it was no big deal to him. But now he realized that maybe it was time for a new look. He went over to his dresser and opened it for the first time in a long time. Well. It's not much, but these will have to do, he mumbled as he pulled out a pair of black Jonin-style pants with orange stripes down the sides of each leg, an orange scarf and a fishnet shirt. He was about to put them on when he spotted his beetle armor out of the corner of his eyes. Perhaps he could fit that into his new look. Scene change. Sarutobi sighed in relief as she filed away the last official form before he suddenly remembered something. Oh right, I'm still supposed to meet with Naruto and his team. He quickly wrote a note telling where he was off to, then vanished out of his office, making his way towards the young puppeteer's home. Scene change. Yujito, Yuigao, Hanabi, Niji and Hinata were all outside in the backyard talking and eating snacks when Naruto stepped out. So this is where you all are. What are you doing? Yuigao and Yujito gasped when they saw him. The boy had changed his look for the much better. Instead of the tattered orange shorts, bandages and cloak or trench coat, he now wore black pants that were taped from the ankle to just below the knee and a fishnet shirt that defined his muscular form nicely. On his legs were his beetle feet boots, but they had been changed into shin guards and covers for the tops of his bare feet that no longer made him taller than normal. He wore a thick orange new scarf around his neck with his forehead protector attached to that one instead of the old headband. His chest sported the protective plate of his beetle armor, along with 2 extra arms and the helmet on his head. However, the helmet was different. Instead of looking like the top half of the head of a stag beetle, it now looked like a hornet's head. With a tinted shade designed to look like compound eyes covering his eyes and 2 long antennae curving backwards from the forehead. The wing case was gone, exposing the insectoid wings underneath and making him look like he was born with them, and 9 different colored storage scrolls were strapped to his left hip. Wow, you look amazing Uzumaki-kun, said Yujito with a perverted grin, while Yugao just nodded. The others were also staring at his new attire as it had come out of nowhere, though Hinata also was secretly enjoying Naruto's new look. The blonde tapped a seal on his helmet and the shade slid up into the helmet, exposing his eyes. The compliments are appreciated, he said. Hanabi darted forward and slammed into his torso, wrapping her small arms around him in a tight hug. The group noticed Naruto sigh in exasperation, but do nothing to remove the girl from his midsection. Perhaps he was getting too used to these interactions. Yujito and Yugao on the other hand were annoyed by this. But before they could do or say anything, Hanabi is grabbed by something long, silver and metallic. It was a stinger-like tail that was previously wrapped around Naruto's waist. No one had even seen it move. Hanabi's eyes widened in surprise as she was lifted into the air, then giggled when she realized why. Hanabi, how many times do I have to tell you to quit hugging me? Ooh, but I can't help it. You look so nice. Hinata snickered while Yujito mumbled something about little girls should act their age and pursue people their own age. Naruto sighed again, an action that was becoming way too frequent as he placed Hanabi back on the ground and re-wrapped the metallic tail around his waist. Neji stepped forward and asked, what brought on the changes to your armor? Naruto merely looked up and said, the beetle theme clashed with my new clothing. Neji nodded, accepting the answer. Everyone was once again calming down when Sarutobi appeared, causing everyone there to nearly attack. Whoa, calm down everyone, it's only me, said the Hokage with a laugh. The group relaxed instantly. Anyway, I'm actually here for Naruto and Yujito. I need to see you and Sai in my office in 20 minutes. Naruto nodded, as did Yujito, and the Hokage vanished. Strange he came here himself, said Neji. It's probably because he can't trust anyone enough to come here without them doing something that'll get them killed by Naruto or one of us. This comment came from Yugao. Either way, we got the message. Yujito, let's go. Right. Naruto grabbed the girl and picked her up bridal style before crouching slightly, spreading his wings. Her eyes had widened at first, then she smiled and wrapped her arms around his neck, ignoring the glare from Yugao and Hanabi. We go, said Naruto as he shot into the sky, getting an excited squeal from the Nibi Jinchuriki. The rest of the group looked on, some slightly jealous of the fact that Yujito got to fly with Naruto, while others were wondering if they could find a way to fly as well. Scene change. Sai didn't really have anywhere to go after the Hokage had released him from prison, so he just opted to return to the now abandoned root compound. The place was dreary and depressing, but he'd make do. He never really needed much anyway. He had just exited the compound and entered the market district when Naruto and Yujito dropped down in front of him, scaring several villagers and startling the ink user himself. The Hokage requests us in his office, was all he said before he took to the sky. Sai noticed that several villagers were still staring up at Naruto, apparently still trying to come to grips with the fact that someone had obtained flight. Sai would smirk if he knew the appropriate time to do so, as he pulled out his ink brush, scroll and ink and painted a bird, used his chakra to bring it to life, and take off after Naruto positioned on its back. It took no time at all to get to the Hokage tower, and they didn't even land at the entrance. They instead opted to land on the balcony. The Hokage was there waiting for them, and he seemed unsurprised by their sudden appearance. Ah, there you are. Naruto placed Yujito on the ground and paid little attention to the fact that she was visibly upset with having to leave Naruto's company. Hokage Jiji, what is it you require of us? Asked Naruto. The old man smiled and gestured with his hand for them to follow them into the office. Oh, it's nothing much, just giving you your pay for your mission. That's it? Asked Yujito rudely, only to get an elbow harshly jammed into her ribs. She grunted and gave a slight glare to Naruto, who was looking at the Hokage. Sarutobi was amused. Actually, young lady, I would also like for you three to be my bodyguards during the final rounds of the Chunin exams. This surprised all of them. Well, I figured you three would like something to do something, considering all of you are a lot stronger than Genin. I know Sai was part of Root, which consisted of upper Chunin level ninja and higher, and Yujito was the personal charge of the Reikage. Then there's you, Naruto. You are one of the most powerful ninjas in Konoha. You guys will make excellent bodyguards. The three of them exchanged glanced, then gave respectful bows. We accept, they said in unison. Sarutobi nodded. Good. Now here is your payment for your last mission, and here are you Konoha Special Op forehead protectors, Yujito and Sai. The two took the headbands with slight smiles before all three of them turned and headed out of the office. Sarutobi gave a smile at Naruto. You look nice, he said. Naruto merely grunted. As the three exited the tower and headed down the street, whispers broke out. Look, it's the demon, his whore and his little follower. Stay away from them, they are very dangerous. Oh, what are you talking about? Leave the boy alone already, geez. What are you kidding? You've seen what that monster is capable of. What? Flying? Shit, I wish I could fly. Makes me want to learn the puppet technique so I could learn to fly. Naruto was a bit surprised by this and therefore didn't bother to punish the asshole slandering him and his companions. Yujito and Sai both noticed this and glanced at Naruto. It seems some people are changing, said Sai. Yujito nodded. It feels kinda nice. Naruto didn't say anything. On their way back, the three engaged in light conversation. So Sai, where exactly do you stay? Asked Yujito out of the blue. Sai just shrugged and answered in an emotionless voice, I am currently taking up residence in the old hidden compound of the Root. This caused Naruto to frown slightly as he mumbled, Root, under his breath. Yujito didn't like that answer. You like in that dank prison alone? Why not find an apartment? All of them are currently occupied already. Well, why not ask Uzumaki-kun for a room? Has an entire complex to himself, right? At this, Naruto's head snapped to Yujito. Don't volunteer me like that, he said with a hint of annoyance. Then he looked to Sai and said, go pack your stuff and choose a room by the end of the day. Sai nodded, surprised that Naruto actually offered him a room after his remark to Yujito. I shall be moved in within an hour, Uzumaki-san. Then Sai took off. Naruto turned to Yujito and snatched her up again before shooting into the sky and back towards home. None of them noticed the square rock exploding and revealing 3 gaping 9-year-old children. Was that him, Konohamaru-kun? Asked a rosy-cheeked orange-haired girl. Konohamaru nodded. Yeah. He's awesome, huh? The boy with the glasses nodded and said, and that's why you want him to train us. Konohamaru nodded. Yeah, if we can get him to train us we can become the strongest kids in class easily, then eventually we can become as strong as the Hokage himself. The 3 children smiled and made their way towards Naruto's complex. This is gonna be awesome. Chapter 15. Children and Foreign Shinobi. Naruto paid little attention as Yujito snuggled into his chest. His mind was focused on going home and getting to bed. The winds passed freely through his hair and over his face as he soared through the air and towards his destination. The steady hum of his wings filled his mind with its peaceful melody, making him close his eyes for a second to fully enjoy the feeling. Then a hand stroking his cheek snapped him out of it. You look so peaceful, Uzumaki-kun. I like that look, said Yujito as she continued to stroke his cheek. Naruto merely shrugged and said, up here is where I find true freedom. It was true. The power of flight was something most if not all humans longed for. Only a very select few have actually accomplished this. Naruto, being one of these people, understood fully what a gift he had been granted. He had to admit to himself that he loved it up in the sky. However, he would have preferred it alone for one simple reason. Yujito's hand was beginning to stray south. Uzumaki-kun, she slurred out, half asleep. Naruto's face twisted into a mix of annoyance and embarrassment and he quickly shot towards the ground. Yujito was forcefully taken out of her daze by this sudden descent and before she could ask what he doing, she was unceremoniously dropped on the ground. Hey. She began but stopped when she saw that Naruto was already heading down the street towards the complex just a block away. She sprang to her feet and rushed after him. Would you drop me like that? I was comfortable. Naruto huffed but refused to turn around. He opened the door and stepped inside, but not before one last comment. Yeah, too comfortable. Then he was gone. Yujito huffed and followed him inside. She tried to catch Naruto again before he headed into his room, but she was just seconds too late. And no amount of prying was going to get his door open again. Oh, you're no fun, Uzumaki-kun, she said as she stalked away. Inside the room, Naruto removed his helmet and his scarf with an air of calmness about him. The only indicator of anything different was the slight blush on his cheeks. Damn Yujito, she's bolder than Yugao, he muttered as he flopped down onto his bed, removing his armor as he did so. Geez, and he thought Yugao's constant hugs and kisses to his neck or forehead were bad enough. He shifted his gaze upward and closed his eyes. He was tired and just wanted sleep. But it was not to be so, for as soon as he closed his eyes his security puppet started going haywire, alerting his senses of intruders. Already he could hear the other occupants of the puppet-guarded apartment complex rushing towards the disturbance and he gave a sigh of annoyance. He got up and headed there at a normal pace. There was no need to run. The intruders would be dealt with before he even got there. That is, unless an extremely powerful enemy had managed to sneak in. But what met him at the front door nearly made him face plant. It was the same for the other occupants of the complex, as well as none other than Konohamaru, and 2 other academy children were suspended in the air by the numerous ropes and wires designed to ensnare intruders. Ahiha, how you doing? Asked the Hokage's grandson with an embarrassed blush on his cheeks. Niji sighed and headed back inside. Hinata followed him while Yujito snickered. Naruto examined the 3 children with a raised eyebrow before he spoke in a flat monotone voice. What do you want? There were numerous answers Naruto expected to hear from the children. He expected angry yells, demands for apologies and pointless begging for their lives. However, their answer shocked him and the others. Will you train us, Naruto boss? Asked Konohamaru, pure sincerity in his voice as he asked his question. Yujito instantly broke out into hysterical laughter and collapsed in a fit, unable to remain standing in her mirth. Naruto had one thing to say to this. What? Train us? Said Konohamaru with a huge smile. I've never met anyone like you and you can fly. You're awesome, man. You gotta train us. We'll make you proud, I promise. We'll never slack off for anything. What? Yujito's laughter intensified, which caused him to look at her with a twitching eyebrow. Leave if you're going to be an idiot. The Nibi Jinchuriki gave a glare mixed with laughter before she turned and walked away. Sure thing, Uzumaki-sensei, ha 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 ha. She vanished around a corner just in time to avoid the numerous shuriken and the katana stabbing into the wall where her head would have been. He turned back to the three children with annoyance clearly displayed on his face. With a few finger movements the ropes and wires released the children, dropping them unceremoniously in a heap. They groaned for a couple of seconds before they scrambled to their feet and stood at attention. "Names?" asked the blonde. The girl reacted first, jumping in front of the two boys and striking a pose. "I'm Konoha's sexiest kunoichi, Mogi." A snot-nosed boy with glasses jumped to Mogi's left and struck a pose as well. "I'm Undawn and I love math." Konohamaru just stood there grinning. "You already know who I am." "We're the Konohamaru Corps," they all said together. Naruto was slightly aware of Yujito's laughter effectively doubling, and he swore he heard a few chuckles from Niji and Hinata. He felt his annoyance grow again as he eyed the three children. "Leave," he said as he turned to head back inside. The three children felt a huge arrow pass through their souls as Naruto closed the door in their faces. "Damn that one cold ninja," said Konohamaru. "I think I actually felt ice on my shoulders from that one." Mogi nodded with a slight pout, but before she could say anything Konohamaru's grin returned. "That's alright though. You'll come around, Naruto. I won't rest until you train us." Then he took off, his two friends in tow. And all three children ignored the stares from the villagers. Inside, Naruto sighed and headed back to his room. "My week just got worse." And it was true. Over the next week Naruto was consumed with a feeling he hasn't felt since he was 10. Foreboding. The Kono Corps, as the three children had taken to calling themselves, seemed to be everywhere. It was like they had their own impressive spy network in the village. They refused to believe how true that was despite the fact that the rest of Konoha kisses Konohamaru's ass in a pathetic attempt at sucking up to the Hokage. They appeared wherever he was, ambushed him at every corner. And they had such small chakra reserves he had trouble determining them from the rest of the civilian villagers around. Every minute of every day Naruto was outside his complex they were there. Like a stink that never quite went away, with their voices high and childish constantly ringing in his ears. "Train us. Come on, train us. You know you want to. Come on. Think of the possibilities. You'll never find greater students. Come on, boss." They attempted to tackle him once while he was heading to one of the only two weapon shops in the village that didn't scorn him, and they nearly got their heads taken off by his blade. This action caused numerous villagers to gasp. On the second day they once again tried to get into the complex and were hospitalized for the rest of the day due to the extremely deadly poisons laced in the kunai knives that had sprayed them. It took a bit of convincing on Sarutobi's part for Naruto to hand over the antidote. On the third day they took to stalking him wherever he went while looking for opportunities to trap him. They had even partially succeeded once when Undawn appeared from behind his camouflage against a fence, making Naruto look over with an annoyed look, missing the other two until they had effectively trapped him with ninja wire. For 3 seconds before Fox Naruto freed him and tried to kill the children. On the fourth day they openly attacked him with training kunai, flinging them at the puppet user 6 at a time each and causing Naruto to capture everyone with chakra strings and fling them back. If they weren't blunted they would have torn right through the children. On the fifth day the three disguised themselves as a rock. That was square and proceeded to stealthily follow him around until finally Naruto growled and slammed his earth-rune glowing hammer into the ground, causing a literal wave of ground to nearly crush them. And numerous villagers. Oh, and the fact that Yujito, Yugao, Tsuchi and even Niji had taken to calling him sensei didn't help. The sixth day yielded exploding paint bombs and a huge graphitized message on the side of the complex, "You will train us." And that was the last straw short of killing them once and for all. He took to flying. High above Konoha. Way up there where nothing could get to him. Until the 7th day. That was when he finally caved in. Because any child that could get the Anbutenzu to grow the message amongst the trees, trained the Kono Corps Naruto. In the forest, so he had no choice but to read it from above, obviously deserved at least a speaking to before he denied them for the 10,000th time that week. So he flew down to the nearest training ground and waited. And sure enough. "Ha. I see you decided to give up, eh? I knew you'd change your mind." Konohamaru would have stepped forward if Fox Naruto hadn't suddenly appeared in a puff of smoke and held its zanbatsu as the boy's throat. "The only thing I'm considering changing my mind on is whether or not I should kill your annoying ass." Konohamaru's sweat dropped and gave a nervous laugh. Naruto sighed and moved the puppet away from the boy and back to his side where it stood almost protectively. The three children looked on in wonder at the doll. "That's amazing," said Mogi. "It's so beautiful. I've never seen a puppet like this one." The other two agreed. Naruto watched the three children as they examined the puppet with nothing but the purest of wonder and curiosity and couldn't help himself. With a bit of blood over the seals on his arm, the rest of his puppet save for the root appeared in puffs of smoke. Onitenshi towered above the children and seemed to eclipse the sun as it spread its massive black wing and waved its tentacles. Yoshino looked to be truly alive, standing serenely next to the massive one-winged puppet with her eyes closed. Danzo stood with his rope spear dancing about like a snake ready to strike, and Mizuki stood with arms crossed and tiger ears flicking to and fro like he was actually hearing things. Then there were his two newest additions. Zabuza stood there tall and imposing, dressed in a cloak and shouldering the Kubikiri Haucho. The blade was glowing with the runes for water and for wind, and the cloak glowed with shadow runes. He looked like a wraith. A very special puppet Zabuza would prove to be in the future. Haku stood there next to Zabuza, slightly behind him, a cold mist spiraling around him slowly and calmly, waiting to be used. An ice mirror formed behind him and reflected the sun brilliantly. The three children felt their admiration for Naruto reach all new levels. Wow. Naruto did a few finger movements and had his puppets do a few things relating to their abilities, and the children watched for hours as Haku made ice sculptures. Zabuza melded with the shadows, Danzo and Onitenshi seemed to have a conversation, and Mizuki tried to hit on Yoshino, only to be slapped. As time went on, Naruto found himself getting more and more into it. He made his puppets do a lot of different things, much to the enjoyment of the children. He reenacted battles, had them spar, and even had Yoshino kiss Konohamaru on the cheek. Finally, as the sun was setting, Naruto snapped out of it and resealed his puppets. The Kono Corps were disappointed but still extremely happy. They had never had such a great day with anyone. "Explain to me," began the puppeteer as he got to his feet. The three children looked on in full attention. "Why me? Why seek me out to the point of risking death? Why not ask for some other ninja to train you? Do you simply wish to learn the puppet technique?" He had to know. No child was insane enough to purposefully drive the easily angered and bloodthirsty puppet using Kyuubi Jinchuriki of Konoha without some sort of good reason other than training. No child wanted to learn to play with dolls anyway. He had heard enough people say it enough times. Truly no one knows the potential of the puppet technique. So he eyed the three children with a cold, emotionless gaze, keeping his blue orbs trained on them as to make sure he saw no hints of deception or ulterior motives. Konohamaru was the first to speak. "Because you're different." Wow. That certainly was an answer he wasn't expecting. Because he's different. Ha. What irony. He would have laughed if it was in his nature to do so. Instead he frowned a bit. "Do you know who I am?" he asked, emotionless. Konohamaru didn't have an answer, and neither did Mogi or Andan. The blonde sighed. "I am Uzumaki Naruto. My rank is Special Opnin of Konohagakure no Sado. I am the soon-to-be most powerful puppeteer on the planet. I feel extreme dislike for over 3/4 of this village and have no qualms about killing people for even looking at me the wrong way. And that includes annoying children." They gulped. "My reputation is not a good one here. Surely your teacher has told you as much." Konohamaru glared. "That sap. All he talks about is shortcutting me to the position of Hokage. He's a total ass kisser. They all are. But you." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "You're different. You treated me like any other bratty kid would be treated. You're strong and you won't go easy on me. That's why I want you to train us." Naruto saw through the boy's mask instantly. The boy thirsts for acknowledgement, a new identity, a boy trying desperately to rid himself of his grandfather's shadow. Of course he'd latch on to perhaps the only person besides his grandfather to see him as an actual child and not some title. How unique for a boy with royalty such as his. He examined all three of them. They were so pure, so innocent. Their big eyes seemed to glow as they stared, hope shining just below the surface of their retinas. And yet he just knew they did not know what they were getting themselves into. Training with him would destroy their innocence in a matter of days. Naruto was never one to sugarcoat anything. They would learn all of the dark truths about the world through his training. Were they ready for that? Perhaps not. But then again, he wasn't entirely ready to find out about the Kyuubi while suffering from a mass beating either. But still he had. And he had survived, grew strong because of it. He looked at the children one more time and noted with the tiniest bit of amusement the signs of impatience beginning to surface on their faces. He sighed. He just knew he wasn't going to hear the end of this. Fine. That was all that needed to be said. Yada. Scene change. Sai stood before the complex with a duffel bag slung over one shoulder and a large sketch pad over another. His mind was contemplative. He wasn't used to living anywhere so open. The corridors of Route were practically all he knew. And he couldn't identify the emotion that sprung up when Yujito stepped out and said, "Hey. About time your pale ass got here. Come in and pick a room." "I don't know where Uzumaki-kun went." She chuckled. "He's probably running from those three kids." Sai didn't get the chance to say anything before he was pulled into the complex. He mentally noted that the security puppets didn't attack him. "Naruto-san must shave programmed me in already." "Come on, I'll introduce you to Niji and Hinata," said Yujito as she continued to drag the boy through the complex. Days went by. Naruto made do on his promise and proceeded to teach the children the basics of human anatomy, poisons, and chakra control. The three soaked it up like sponges in their constant attempts to impress their new teacher. Many had quite a few negative things to say when they saw the honorable grandson and two other young children following the blonde Jinchuriki around the village, openly calling him sensei and boss. But they were also smart enough to say it in the privacy of their own homes. The Konohamaru, Mogi and Undawn, Naruto proved to be a brutal teacher. Some of the things he told them honestly scared the hell out of them. The way he described how a ninja could kill another person had made Mogi go pale and Undawn shudder. Konohamaru took all of this better than the other two, as he is from a ninja-oriented family. Naruto was actually a bit impressed when the children continued to train under him. He hadn't expected them to last this long. Hell, he had thought that they'd run off screaming and calling him a sick freak after the first day, but it wasn't so. They kept coming back. And it made him actually put more effort into training them. "So what are we learning today, Naruto-sensei?" asked Mogi as she and the other two children followed him through the village towards the academy. Numerous villagers glared at Naruto's back as the small group passed them, but the blonde ignored them in favor of answering his unofficial student's question. "Your chakra control still needs improvement," he said. "So I will teach you to walk on water using your chakra." The three children beamed. He had already taught them the leaf floating and the tree walking exercise, and the three had learned it pretty damn fast, amazingly so for children their age. In fact, numerous ninja were gaping as Konohamaru calmly walked sideways on the building, still following Naruto. "Really awesome," yelled Konohamaru as he pumped his fist in the air. Undawn merely gave a smile. Naruto nodded and picked up the pace a bit. "Hurry up. The hot springs are right up the street," he said. The three children chorused, "Hi," and began to jog in order to catch up to him. None of them saw the ninja hidden in the shadows, scowling. So that's where the honorable grandson has been, ensnared by the filthy demon's false persona. He followed after them, determined to save the three children. It took almost no time for Naruto to arrive at the hot springs with the children, and when he did he turned and faced them. "Now then," he began as he focused chakra to his feet and walked right out to the center of the steaming water. In order to successfully do this, you must keep a steady flow of chakra in your feet. Use the chakra to create a platform on the water while at the same time fusing it with the water and forcing the water itself to become strong enough to support your weight. Do little chakra and you will sink. The three children nodded, full at attention and with eager smiles. Naruto stared at them for a minute before he glared a bit. "Well, get to it." "Oh. Alright," said Mogi with an embarrassed blush. Naruto nodded as the three approached the water and leapt over to small bridge where he sat and observed. "Ah. Hot. Hot. Hot." Naruto hid his amusement quite well as Konohamaru scrambled out of the water at a frantic pace. "Focus more chakra," he commanded as Konohamaru approached the water again. The day wore on. The Kono core grew steadily better and at a quick pace. Naruto was not surprised in the least. These three children had a talent that was just waiting to be unleashed upon the world. He was actually a bit impressed with them. They had proven to be very dedicated. No matter what he told them to do, they did it with no complaints whatsoever. And finally, as the sun was beginning to set, he called them over. He found it odd that he was actually staring into the hopeful eyes of three children. This was actually far beyond what he'd actually experienced. Sure, there were the few women and girls that were suddenly attracted to him and the few male acquaintances he'd unwittingly acquired in the last few months, but it was still odd to know that there were actually children hoping for his approval, his praise. He gave a sigh and spoke. "Not bad," he said. "You're actually picking it up faster than I did." The three beamed up at him and he couldn't help the slight smirk that graced his lips. "But you still have a bit to go. Then after you master that I will teach you how to make chakra strings." The three would have jumped for joy, but Naruto's hardened look forced them to reconsider. It didn't stop them from smiling though. "Now go on. Study at your own pace until tomorrow. I want you to be able to recite to me every bone in the body by then." "Hi," they said before they leapt to their feet. "See you tomorrow, Naruto-sensei." Then they were gone. Naruto smirked again. "Ambitious brats," he said as he activated his wings and prepared to shoot into the sky. "I hope you realize now, Ibisu-san, that I will do them no harm. I am more than just your famous demon." He shot into the sky at an impressive speed. A second later Ibisu appeared with a slight glare, but also an intrigued look on his face, and for the first time, he found himself doubting his thoughts towards Naruto. 2 months later, Tsuchi was knocking on Naruto's front door. "Hey man. Open up in there. I know you can hear me, damn it." There was a brief sound of rustling clothing before the door swung open and revealed Yujito. "Don't you know how early it is? People are trying to sleep in here." Tsuchi ignored the girl and wheeled himself in. "Hey Naruto. You mind explaining to me why I found this on my porch?" And after that sentence he pulled the sitter out from behind his back and shoved it forward. The problem was that it wasn't Naruto he had thrust the weapon at, it was Neji, and he looked just as annoyed as Yujito. Why must you be so damn loud, you obnoxious simpleton? He growled out as he rubbed sleep from his eyes and gave a yawn. Suchi glared. Up yours, asswipe, he said. Niji just sighed and headed to the kitchen to get a cup of tea. Yujito took one look at Suchi's weapon and sighed. She knew what this was about. She had heard Naruto talking to himself about it. Uzumaki-kun isn't here right now. He's out with those 3 kids. At 8 in the morning, was Suchi's reply. Yes, and on a Saturday. When normal people are trying to sleep. Suchi growled and replaced the weapon on the back of his chair. You tell him I want to see him, got it? Yujito shrugged. Alright, don't get your panties in a knot. And before the boy could reply, Yujito wheeled him back outside and closed the door. God damn it. Inside, Yujito went to the nearest couch and collapsed. Damn loud mouths, she said before she closed her eyes and passed out. Naruto, who was unaware of Suchi's plight, stood at a training ground with Konohamaru, Mogi and Undan, watching as the 3 held out arms and wiggled their fingers, causing the chakra strings extended from the tips of them to wave around like snakes. Good, said Naruto, causing the 3 children to smile broadly. The last 2 months had been extremely productive for all 3 of them. Konohamaru, Mogi and Undan knew more about the human body than most others now, and their chakra control was far advanced. There were some chunin that couldn't even do the things they could. And Naruto's knowledge in runes was progressing pretty fast as well. He had long since mastered the basic 9 and was moving on to more advanced stuff. Things like speed enhancement runes, more defense runes and even a rune made to permanently keep a blade sharp. He had of course added these runes to the numerous weapons his puppets used. Word had also spread to every corner of the village that Naruto was training the honorable grandson and 2 others in his arts, and while it was generally a good thing to know that a powerful ninja was helping with the development of more powerful ninjas, in Naruto's case there were mixed reactions. Numerous people were generally happy to know that the boy was opening up. But then there were the numerous and very ridiculous rumors on how Naruto even came to be training the children. While some knew the truth, there were those that were still ignorant and had come up with some truly felonious and totally retarded theories. Then there was the fact that everyone knew that Naruto turned the poor saps he killed into his puppets and were fearful he would teach the children that as well. Naruto had contemplated that, but then reconsidered. Perhaps when they were older. He eyed the 3 children as they continued to play with their chakra strings and nodded in approval. The 3 had come a very long way. Here, he began as he tossed a tattered scroll to them. This will begin you on your path to the art of puppetry. Keep that scroll safe and study hard from it. Konohamaru examined the scroll and gave a huge smile when he read the title. Thank you, sensei, he said. Mogi and Undan gave smiles as well. We won't let you down. Naruto nodded, not really caring if they somehow failed to live up to his expectations or not. They were their own people after all, and he wasn't one to pointlessly sadden a child with something as little as standards, especially since he had very few standards himself. The 3 children began to study the scroll instantly, and Naruto just sat and meditated. The Kyuubi was always eager to instruct Naruto on runes. After all, the faster Naruto learned them, the closer he was to freedom outside of the seal. Scene change. Iwagao turned her report into the Hokage and rushed home. She'd been on a mission for nearly 2 weeks, and she was in desperate need of a bath. That and she couldn't wait to see Naruto again. She hoped that seductress Yujito hadn't done anything while she was gone. She knew Naruto was nearly immune to the affection of a member of the opposite sex, but that still didn't oust the chance that he might give in, especially to someone like Yujito, a fellow demon container, and very openly expressive with her intentions for Naruto. The purple-haired woman was 3/4 the way home when someone called out to her. Hey Yu-chan, long time no see. The woman almost groaned but held it in and turned around. Hey there Anko, she said. How have you been? Scene change. Later on in the day Naruto became of something very quickly. There were a whole lot of faces he did not recognize in the village, and he almost stopped in surprise when a rather attractive young foreign woman smiled affectionately at him. Hey, what's wrong, boss? Asked Konohamaru, temporarily peering up from the scroll he and his friends were reading. Naruto ignored the boy and continued to look around. There were a lot of new faces. He briefly wondered what was going on before it all came back to him. Heh, he began. It's that time already? He looked up at the sky. It was around noon. The sun was at its highest point in the sky and beating down on the village. So the Chunin exams were about to begin. Perhaps he should report in to begin his duties to Hokage Jiji. He was taken out of his thoughts when 2 people came around the corner in front of him. The raven-haired Uchiha gave a teasing smirk as soon as he saw Naruto and his 3 apprentices, but held in his comments and just opted for a greeting. Uchiha style. Uzumaki, he said with a nod. Uchiha, was Naruto's response. Then he focused his attention on the girl partially hidden behind Sasuke shyly. Haruno. Hi, Naruto, she said. The last couple of months had proved a large test for Sakura. She was afraid of Naruto, and her mother hated his guts. However, Sasuke was friends with Blonde, and so were several others. She had been around and had heard mixed stories about him. She knew about his demon. Everyone did at this point, as Naruto expressed as much without a single care in the world, and Naruto himself, although a bit cold and emotionless, wasn't really all that bad. He seemed to enjoy being around his small group of allies, and he was extremely talented. She knew it was him that had motivated both her crush and Hanabi to train so hard, gaining power not natural for people their age and rank. She was also willing to say that Naruto was stronger than Sasuke. Not something fangirls are easily willing to accept. Plus, the fact that he didn't kill her when they first met merited some points. She knew Naruto was itching for council blood, and saying the wrong thing could easily lead to death, and she, being a council member's daughter, should have been a prime target. But he generally left her to her own devices, even briefly smiling in amusement whenever she went fangirl on Sasuke. However, she was still intimidated by his presence and sought out Sasuke for comfort, hiding behind him like a little kid. It was pathetic in her eyes, but she couldn't help it. "Still training, I see?" asked the Uchiha, once again looking at the three children who ignored him in favor of reading more of the scroll. Naruto said nothing. He just nodded and gestured toward the three. "They're persistent, but gifted as well." Sasuke nodded. Like many others, he too had seen the three children trailing Naruto, walking on the walls, sprinting across water and pranking poor unsuspecting villagers, using their newfound knowledge on the human body. They had talent. Even he could see that. Naruto looked at Sasuke and Sakura for another minute and asked, "Where's Hanabi? I figured you three would be getting ready for the Chunin exams." Sasuke looked up and thought. Perhaps that's the reason Kakashi told us to meet him in an hour. But I haven't seen Hanabi today. Maybe she's at home practicing her katans." Naruto nodded in agreement. Hanabi worked more than the others on her specialized moves, feeling she had something to prove, what with being younger than everyone else and all. "Who's Hanabi?" asked Konohamaru. That name sounded familiar but only slightly. It was then that he noticed Sakura and Sasuke. "And who's the pink-haired babe with the big ugly forehead and flat chest?" Sasuke actually sweat dropped as Sakura seemingly teleported at Konohamaru. "You little shit," she yelled with a fist raised. Konohamaru gulped and looked towards Naruto for help and gasped as he saw the blonde already walking away. "Sensei, you traitor," he yelled before he took off, Sakura hot on his heels. Mogi and Undawn sweat dropped as well. "He's so impulsive," said the little girl. Naruto was actually going to respond when he heard an oof. "Then a watch where you're going, you little brat." He heard Sakura telling someone to put him down. Without a word, Naruto and Sasuke vanished, leaving the two other children to catch up. Sakura glared hard at the young man before her as he hoisted Konohamaru up by the front of his scarf. "Little punk, smacking me like that. Looks like someone needs to teach you a little lesson in manners." He raised his fist. Sakura glared harder. "Hey. We already apologized, you big bully, so put him down." The young man did no such thing. He merely scoffed and brought his down. There was a loud crack and the young man cried out in pain as a rock surrounded by fire smashed into his wrist. "Ugh. What the hell was that?" He dropped Konohamaru, who immediately ran over to Sakura. "I wouldn't mess with that one if I were you, Sunanin." Both he and the young woman he was with turned their heads to the left and saw Sasuke glaring down at them, utter hatred shining in his eyes. "Whoa. Local hot eye," thought the girl. The young man scoffed again and massaged his fist. "Oh. And why not, pretty boy?" Sasuke smirked and leapt to the ground. "Because, you could end up dead." And before the Suna boy could react, the bundle on his back suddenly came to life. Four bladed arms burst from the bandages and grabbed the poor sap in a tight embrace, cutting deep gashes into his body and causing blood to fall to the ground. Sakura gasped and so did the Suna girl. "Wah. I'm such a basic puppet," said a voice that sent chills down their spines. The puppet squeezed tighter, cutting off the young man's breath. "Show yourself," exclaimed the girl. She expected numerous people to emerge from the shadows. An image was already in her head. So it was a huge shock when a younger man of about 12 appeared and stared into her eyes with ice-cold voids, swimming with merciless intentions, his arm extended and a single finger pointing towards the Sunanin. The chakra string attached to her brother's puppet from his finger. "I am possible," she gasped out as the blonde approached. The blonde's look intensified and so did the Sunanin, struggling. "Suna ninja's here for the Chunin exams, no doubt." He cut the chakra from his finger, releasing the puppet and the young man. "I suggest you watch how you act while in this village. This is the only time I will warn you." Then he turned away with the other Konoha residents following. Sasuke sent one last smirk over his shoulder, then they were gone, leaving two stunned Suna genin and one genuinely surprised redhead. The girl finally recovered enough to approach her injured brother. He was on his back, looking up in shock, and the only thing he could say was, he knew. The puppet technique. He. Tamari. Who was he? The girl shook her head. I don't know. Up in the trees the redhead gave a sadistic smile. Perhaps. He can give me a challenge. Naruto didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of his rise to legend. Chapter 16. The Progressing Day. Shortly after his interaction with the genin from Suna, Naruto was once again back in his complex with Mogi, Konohamaru and Undawn. Yuga was gone, no doubt off on a mission for Hokage or perhaps getting ready for the Chunin exams herself and the duties it entails. Hinata was gone as well, as were Niji and Hanabi. And Sasuke had wandered off sometime during the trip back towards his place with Sakura following close behind. And Yujito was. Where the hell was she? It's not like she had many friends outside of those who helped Naruto take up space in his puppet-guarded apartment complex turned small mansion. She wasn't very popular after all. He turned to the three brats before him. Having long since resigned himself to being these children's sensei, he had programmed the seals and his puppets not to flay them on sight whenever they showed up. This of course opened them up to the numerous weapons, supplies and other assorted items Naruto and his roommates had collected over their lives' ninja careers. Not to mention the numerous puppet parts. And this was the first time they had been anywhere further than the front hallway. He led them to the dojo and set them loose with the words, "Try not to kill yourselves. I will be back later." "Hi sensei." Was the energetic call of all three brats as he turned and walked away. They were staring around the area with wide excited eyes for the first time. If one were to have seen their faces, they'd have thought a lifelong dream had been fulfilled after years of perilous struggle and whatnot. Then they grinned. Freaking jackpot. As he traveled, his thoughts idly wandered back to the Suna trio. And yes, let's not fool anyone here. He knew there were three people there. That redhead's chakra was so massive it was damn near impossible not to see his ass there trying to be all stealthy. Hell, those three nin with the music note headband were better hidden than he was. Anyway, that's not what he was worrying about. What was actually bothering him a bit was the redhead's face. There was something familiar about him, very much so actually. He just couldn't put his finger on it. With a shrug he dismissed the redhead from his mind for a bit, adjusting his scarf and exiting his home. Naruto-san. Sai, completely oblivious to the reflexive senbon needle that Naruto had nearly plunged into his jugular, gave a fake smile and a wave. There you are. I believe Tsuchi-san was looking for you. Ah, that's right, Tsuchi, yet another thing on his to-do list today. His fingers gave a few flexes before he shrugged. I'll see to him now. He spread his wings and prepared to fly. Wait, Hokage-sama was looking for you as well. I believe he wants to brief us on our duties. Naruto gave a flat emotionless look to Sai before he shot into the air and towards the Hokage tower, completely unaware of all the attention he had gained from such a simple act. The ninja that were visiting and that had happened to see him showed various signs of shock, surprise and awe. Holy shit, did you see that guy? He freaking flew. Like a bird. Who the hell was he? Is he entering the Chunin exams as well? What's with the hornet motif? He part of that clan from Iowa. Sai felt a slight wave of an emotion he couldn't yet identify, causing the corner of his mouth to twitch upwards for just a second before he pulled out his scroll and ink. Hokage-sama would want to see him as well. So, ignoring the gaping and the fresh wave of whispers, he conjured up his standard eagle and also flew towards the Hokage tower. Scene change. The Nabi stepped into a training ground alone and gave a small smile as she detached the clawed gauntlet of one of the demon brothers from the strap on her waist and then pulled out a scroll. Naruto-sama was probably unaware, though she highly doubted it, of this, but she was actually pretty decent with sealing scrolls. She had actually began to learn about them shortly after meeting Naruto, even before the whole fiasco with Root and the exile from the Hyuga by her father. Thus it would be a bit of a surprise to anyone had they been observing the girl when she unrolled the scroll, bit her finger and ran the blood over the seal with a mutter of, "Kai." And it would be an even bigger surprise when three items appeared in a puff of smoke. They were useful items. Picked up, unnoticed by her comrades on her way back from Wave. She couldn't wait to show Naruto-sama. Though the items needed a lot of repairs and it would be a while before she could show them off, it was going to be great. She smiled. Sasuke was also preoccupied. Resting on his futon and thinking. He was a bit excited actually. The Chunin exams were coming up and he was sure he was going to be entered by Kakashi. He briefly turned his attention to the pink-haired girl who he allowed to follow him around wherever he went. She was examining his home with wide eyes, no doubt being assaulted with astounded thoughts at the prospect of being allowed into his room. He chuckled a bit in his head. A few months ago he would have viewed this girl as a waste of space, pathetic and undeserving of her budding career as a ninja. But that was then, before she proved to be a person worthy of notice. She accepted Naruto and therefore accepted him and the others as well. She was open-minded and strong-willed. And despite what a lot of people might think, she was improving at quite an impressive rate with his surprisingly willing help. Her drive to not be shown up by a brat like Hanabi also helped her along. And it felt rather nice to have someone depend on him the way those brats depended on Naruto. It made him feel a bit more like Naruto's equal. Sasuke smirked. Naruto was a person to emulate. That was a fact he was willing to admit. Naruto's power was the biggest evidence of this. Anything Naruto did granted him some new form of power, whether it be techniques or loyal comrades, himself included. He'd employ similar tactics. Itachi was a fool for believing power lies only in hate and vengeance. And he had been a fool for believing that. Not to get anything twisted. Itachi was freaking screwed when that climactic battle eventually came. His revenge mattered to him a lot. And a decent amount of hate would be called forth when the time warranted it. Sasuke would just go about taking steps to that eventual killing in a different way, ones that didn't result in him becoming an empty shell of his former self. "Come on," he told Sakura as he stood, his day's worth of pondering done for the time being. "Let's go locate our teammate. Training waits for no one." He hid his smile with the expert-like quality of a professional actor when she gave a meek nod and a shudder. The day progressed. Kakashi did indeed sign his team up to enter the Chunin exams, as did Kurenai and Asuma. Naruto and Sai met up with Yujito, who immediately launched herself at the puppet user and clung to him while nuzzling his cheek with hers, purring like a cat. "Uzumaki-kun, I missed you," she exclaimed with another hug. Naruto had sighed and removed the Nibi Jinchuriki from his person before standing at attention before Sarutobi. "Hokage-jiji," he said, his tone exasperated as he held Yujito away from him. The Hokage gave a chuckle. "Hello, Naruto. It's been a bit of time since we last talked, eh?" Naruto gave the very slightest of smiles and shrugged. "We're busy people," he said. The Hokage chuckled. "So I hear from my grandson." Yujito snickered, making Naruto glare at her. "Anyway," continued Sarutobi as he became serious again. "I suppose I should give you a bit of a brief of your upcoming duties for the exams then." Yujito stood at attention, Sai, too became well more serious than he usually looks, and Naruto's only visible change was the very slight change in his posture. The Hokage eyed all three of them with something akin to fondness as he laced his fingers and began to speak again. "Well, first know that your services won't even be absolutely needed until the third part of the Chunin exams where you will act as my personal guard, though I do want you to keep an eye out for any trouble in the village. There will be several well-known people from other countries here, both allies and hostiles. Thus be sure to keep them in line and be ready anytime as I may need your assistance." Yujito looked shocked as did Naruto, while Sai's eyes widened just a bit. The Hokage chuckled. "No need to be so surprised. Surely the rank special op meant more than you thought. Your rank signifies your status in my eyes as well as your power and prestige. I alone have the power to tell you what to do. Until then you are free to do as you wish, as long as you do not endanger the village." Yujito and Sai both looked even more shocked. They had accepted this rank from the Hokage with only a slight idea of the privileges it brought. They had no idea it brought this much. I don't understand," began Yujito. "I am. Or was Akumo-nin, an assassin sent to kill one of your most powerful shinobi? I'm not even all that loyal to Konoha, just to Uzumaki-kun. How can you so easily throw out such trust?" The Hokage went to speak as well, but was cut off by Sai. "And I was a part of faction that was less than loyal to you personally. I cannot comprehend this." The Hokage chuckled. "It's quite simple," he began. "Naruto trusts you." That was all that needed to be said. The question was answered right then and there with that simple statement. It stunned both Sai and Yujito, who both opted to look at the blonde puppet user. Naruto himself was blindsided by those two words and the pure emotion that was laced within said words. He hadn't expected this. And he sure as hell didn't expect Yujito to lunge at him and try to slam her lips into his, though he should have. His reflexes did save him from a mouth rape, but not from being tackled to the floor by the beautiful young woman. It was at this time that Yuigao decided to show herself, looking a bit drunk. "Hokage-sama, Yuzuki Yuigao reporting for what the hell are you doing to Naru-kun? Get off of him." The catfight soon erupted that spilled out into the hallway, startling the secretary and making Naruto growl, Sarutobi laugh and Sai chuckle unintentionally, a reaction that caused a million questions to explode into his mind. Looks like more studying about emotions and feelings was in the near future for the young man. His musings were cut short what Naruto unsealed Haku and froze the quarreling Kunoichi and Ice from the neck down. "Damn females," he muttered as he stalked out, leaving the two girls to glare, first at his back then at each other. Scene change. Hanabi opened the door to the dojo and froze at the sight that greeted her. "Eh?" began Konohamaru as he peered up from the pile of weapons, wooden parts and poisons had gathered up before him and his two friends. "Who are you?" He then noticed the clawed gauntlet that encased her right arm and gasped with wide eyes. "Oh wow, where'd you get that? It's awesome." The young Hyuga's eyes narrowed dangerously and her body tensed. "Who are you?" she began. "How did you get here? Intruders aren't usually this skilled in infiltration. Naruto-sama's traps should have killed 3 weaklings like you." All 3 other children were instantly on their feet, looking offended. "Boy. First of all, we didn't sneak in. Naruto-sensei let us in. Second of all, you don't even know us. Who are you calling weak?" Mogi glared as well. Hanabi scoffed. "What? Naruto-sama is your sensei. Do you think I'm stupid or something? You must be if you don't know that. We've been his students for like 2.5 months," stated Mogi. Konohamaru emphasized this point by creating a few chakra strings that lashed out and tripped the Hyuga, making her land on her ass. "Ha! Who's weak now, Chibi Baka?" Hanabi saw red. With a cute little roar, she launched herself at Konohamaru. Her wicked-looking gauntlet seemed to gleam with otherworldly darkness. Die. Scene change. After being thawed out by a still amused Hokage, Yuigao gave her report and then promptly headed home, this time making sure to avoid all distractions. Not even the look the girl with a name so annoyingly close to hers would falter her resolve to get home, take a shower and hit the hay. "What the hell are you staring at, cat bitch?" "Okay, well that earlier assessment was wrong." Yujiro merely shrugged. "Not much. Though I do have to wonder why. What are you, like 23? Anyway, I'm wondering why someone your age wants a person as young as Uzumaki-kun. Are you such a loser that no one around your own age wants you or something?" Oh no, she just did not. Yugao's head turned to Yujiro so fast there was an audible crack. "Say that again?" she questioned in a voice that made the villagers they were passing by unintentionally wet themselves and run. Yujiro's grin became a look of condescending as she crossed her hands behind her head. "Well, I'm just saying. You're a grown woman. Uzumaki-kun is 13. Yugao, suppressing the urge to lop off the Jinchuriki's head, replied with a scowl. "First of all, I'm only 19, retard, and second of all, aren't you older than him too?" Yugao shrugged. "I'm 16, not someone way older. I'm closer to his age so." She grinned. "Yeah." Yugao scowled. "It's none of your business or your concern who I desire." She then shunshined off before Yujiro could retort. Yugao was too damn tired and drunk to deal with the antics of that infuriating blonde former Kumo Kunoichi, so she got her ass out of there as fast as possible before she spilt some blood. Scene change. When Tsuchi opened the door and saw Naruto, he immediately glared. "Well, look who it is. Just who I wanted to act. Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Naruto's slightly annoyed but still mostly emotionless voice rang out even as he grabbed Redhead, hoisted him up over his shoulder, and strolled with him to the living room. "Your paralysis, I'm ending it," he said, making Tsuchi's eyes widen in shock. What the hell? Since when can you even do that? Hey. Damn it, Naruto, put me the hell down." The blonde puppeteer sighed. "Shut up. Yes, I can fix your back. I've been working on a way to heal you since that day we fought Danzo and his minions. Now hold still." He tore Tsuchi's shirt from him and pulled out an array of tools, inks, brushes and medical supplies. Tsuchi gasped. Hey, wait a minute, man. Hey. Damn it, Naruto, shit. Lagami. I never even said I want to walk again. That's why I gave you the sitter." Naruto sighed. "That weapon is suited for you and you alone and you're going to use it. Now shut up. This discussion is over." Naruto, it seemed, was still a bit annoyed from his earlier interaction with Yujiro and Yugao. "Damn it, Naruto. AHHH. Scene change. Mogi and Undawn stared, transfixed at the chaos that was erupting before them, with their backs pressed firmly against the wall. The sheer intensity of the battle between Konohamaru and Hanabi had quite honestly scared the two children. First of all, they had no idea that anyone could be as strong as this Hanabi girl was at her age. The girl was obviously no older than they were, but her abilities were on a whole other level. Mogi herself had seen Chunin weaker than this girl. And elemental abilities. What the hell? Who even has the chakra needed for such high-level abilities at this age? Then Konohamaru had decided to shock her with his own skills. "Ha! Missed me, Chibi Baka," exclaimed Konohamaru as he leapt up and attached himself to the corner of the ceiling, dodging the hail of shuriken, and grinned down as the scowling wide-eyed girl. His arms were crossed and his fingers facing outwards, on each finger was a chakra string, and on the end of each string, a kunai. The 10 weapons were positioned around him as if waiting to strike. "Cretin," she growled before he flexed the claws to her gauntlet and shot up the wall at him. Konohamaru responded by lunging at her. She dodged to the right and rammed her shoulder into his chest, launching him harshly to the ground. He rolled to the side a second later, barely dodging Hanabi as she crashed into the ground, claws first. She snarled and went to attack, but had to roll to the right to avoid his chakra-controlled projectile weapons. The dojo had become a mess of destruction, craters and scorch marks, as well as slashes in the wall and distorted earth littered the area. The two children clashed again and again, lost in their battle. "Hayden!" screamed the girl as Konohamaru launched all 10 of his kunai at her. The weapons bounced off of the chakra dome, forcing Konohamaru to jump up, tossing around several explosive tags. Hanabi was thrown off of her feet mid-spin as the tags exploded, but her Byakugan allowed for her to block the trio of kunai thrown her way. But these were followed closely by a hailstorm of shuriken. She growled and began to spin again. Fuetin. K's Katen. Wind and chakra exploded off of her and expanded out in all directions. Mogi and Undawn barely managed to get behind a piece of upturned floor before the wind hit them. Not that it mattered much as the wood was obliterated by said attack and slammed into them, smashing them into the wall. Konohamaru didn't fare much better, but he did manage to wrap his strings around her right before the wind slammed into him, looking her up and snagging her along for the ride. She gasped as she was yanked forward and into Konohamaru a second after said boy hit the wall. They crumpled to the floor in a tangled mess of exhausted limbs and torn clothing. For a few minutes both just laid there breathing heavily and glaring into each other's eyes until finally Konohamaru grinned. With a bit of effort, he separated himself from Hanabi and rested his back against the wall. Hanabi meanwhile just sat up and took off her gauntlet. "Huff, you know," began Konohamaru. "You're something else. If it wasn't for Naruto-sensei's training I wouldn't have stood a chance." Hanabi took a few seconds to glare before she sighed. "I must admit, for someone with such a small amount of abilities, you did amazingly well. Quite skilled with what you have you are." She sighed. "And the skills you do possess could only have been learned from Naruto-sama. Forgive my rudeness." Konohamaru snorted. "Don't sweat it. I actually had fun fighting you. Undawn and Mogi never want to spar and the other kids in the academy are too weak now hahaha. What did you say your name was again?" "It's Hanabi," she said. Konohamaru smiled and stood. "Cool. I'm Konohamaru Sarutobi. Konoha's next Hokage." Despite herself, Hanabi smiled a bit. "Nice to meet you." Undawn and Mogi approached a second later, both looking like they'd been through hell and back. "Konohamaru-kun, I think we should leave," said the orange-haired girl. Hanabi glared. "You're not going anywhere until you help me clean this mess." She grabbed Konohamaru's arm for emphasis, causing Mogi to glare at her. Undawn just sighed. Later that night when everyone got home, they would be surprised to find Hanabi, Konohamaru, Mogi and Undawn asleep against each other in the dojo, a scroll on elemental manipulation abandoned and unrolled in front of them. They all dismissed it though in favor of more desirable goals such as sleep or a shower, or in Naruto's case when he arrived home at the crack of dawn, something to cure his pounding headache. Damn, Tsuchi was a bigger baby than he thought. Oh well. The asshole would be walking again by the time the Chunin exams were over, so no skin off his teeth. "Heh, what a clever use for runes though I must say," said the Kyuubi. Naruto nodded. "If he manages to break that spine I'm killing him. I put a lot of work into that damn thing." The Kyuubi laughed. "Ugh, shut up. My head." He missed Yuigao giving him a loving and amused look. What a day. Chapter 17. The Chunin exams begin. At last the day was finally here, the day that had been on everyone's minds for a while now, especially those of the genin of Konoha. The Chunin exams were here and it was time to get started. Naruto, Yujito and Sai stood at attention from their positions in the tree overlooking the academy, watching the genin as they filed into the academy, keeping their eyes peeled for any trouble. "What a strange village symbol," said Sai as he gestured to the 3 genin with a musical note for a symbol. "Hidden music? Hidden choir? Hidden symphony?" Yujito giggled at Sai's antics and said, "Hidden sound. I heard a couple of people talking about it. They're here to make their debut." Naruto eyed the 3 critically. So they were newbies from a newbie village, eh? Interesting. The one with the wrapped face suddenly looked up at them, but he said nothing, just grunted and continued in with his teammates. Naruto raised an eyebrow. That little act was impressive nonetheless. He looked to Sai and Yujito. They too seemed a bit impressed. "He has excellent awareness," commented the Nibi Jinchuriki. Sai nodded while Naruto just shrugged. They watched as a few familiar faces entered the academy. Naruto took his time to observe them. Hinata and her team were obviously trackers. The Inyazuka and the Aburam definitely proved this. Hinata looked up at them and gave a smile and a wave, prompting her teammates to look up as well. Naruto merely gave a slight nod, Yujito grinned and Sai waved back, rather comically too. The Aburam raised an eyebrow upon seeing Naruto's armor, while the Inyazuka shuddered a bit. They entered the academy a second later. Lively bunch," muttered Yujito. "Wonder why she never brought her team over." "That should be obvious," said Sai. "Naruto-san is a scary person." Yujito pouted at the pale accuser. "Uzumaki-kun is amazing. Anyone who can't see that is an idiot." Naruto just sighed and continued his observations. That is when a wave of raw demonic killing intent washed over him and made him stiffen instantly. Yujito too stiffened and her eyes grew wide. As one they turned and looked down. It was the Sand team. They strode towards the academy confidently and with a purpose. But the redhead that was leading them. Yujito voiced her thoughts before Naruto could. "A Jinchuriki," she said wearily. "What the hell is someone like him doing in a Chunin exam?" Naruto felt his own eyes widen a bit in shock. That's what was so off about him. A fellow demon container. His eyes zeroed in on the redhead, taking in every detail. This one was worth keeping an eye on. Naruto already had little trust with others like him. Yujito was an assassin, he himself was a person who would kill without hesitation and without warning, should someone prove too annoying or whatever. And the look in this guy's eyes said just as much. He was a killer, had been killing for as long as Naruto had, probably longer. There was a slightly insane gleam in those eyes, but not so much that he'd snap at any given moment. Something bad had happened to him in the past, but not so terrible it offsettled whatever positive had happened to him. Naruto briefly had a flash of a small faceless child run through his mind, but he couldn't quite pinpoint or connect the dots. The Sand team entered the academy and he shrugged. He'd figure it out later. Yujito too noticeable relaxed as did Sai. "We'll have to keep an eye on that one." "Indeed," said Sai. A second later Sasuke and his pink-haired teammate arrived. Naruto raised an eyebrow in slight amusement. The pink-haired girl was attached to his arm looking nervous and was Sasuke. Comforting her. "Heh, you learn something new about someone every day. Ooh, they're so cute together. I wonder where the brat is though. She might already be inside. We got here a bit late." Yujito shrugged. "True." 69-69. Sasuke and Sakura arrived at the academy where they met Hanabi and Kakashi. "Ah. So you did decide to show up, Sakura-chan?" asked a jounin with a smile. The pink-haired girl growled while springing away from Sasuke. "The hell is that supposed to mean, jackass?" Kakashi merely held his hands up in mock surrender. Sasuke chuckled. "Mama, no need to be so defensive, sheesh. Anyway, you're all here, so the only thing left now is to wish you luck and guide you forward and whatnot." At the smirks of his three students, Kakashi smiled. "Good luck, brats. Now get in there." Sasuke's smirk grew. "Of course." He strode forward and opened the doors. And was promptly met with a scene of a pair of boys harassing a girl with buns in her hair and a guy in green. Sasuke went to speak, but Hanabi jabbed him in the ribs. "Don't say anything," she muttered. "Those two harassing the people are here for a reason. And in case you hadn't noticed, my cousin is on that team. Let's go." Sasuke nodded while looking over at Neji, the member of the team that was pretending to be weak dumbuses, and gave a smirk and a small nod before heading to the third floor, passing right through the Jinjutsu. They arrived at another room, the large training are usually used by academy students. Sasuke was feeling pretty good, so was Hanabi. Sakura too was feeling a bit confident. "Hey you." With the dark eyes. Surprised, Sasuke, Hanabi and Sakura turned and saw the guy in green from earlier standing on the balcony above them. He was grinning. "You're Uchiha Sasuke, are you not? I wish to challenge you." He leapt down, landing directly in front of the Uchiha and eyed him with blazing eyes full of challenge. "I am Konoha's handsome green beast. Rock Lee. Now come. Let us fan our youthful flames of Ak." He suddenly collapsed, twitching and unable to move. Neji was standing behind him with a twitching eyebrow and an extended pointer finger. "What did I just say, you simpleton?" He growled out. "We're trying to keep a low profile. Challenging the Uchiha is not keeping a low profile. Now come on." He hoisted Lee upon his shoulder and gave an exasperated sigh while facing Team 7. "Forgive him. He's like a child you need a leash for." "And Neji-san, how unyouthful of you." Sakura giggled while Sasuke smirked. Hanabi eyed her cousin for a few seconds before she gave a dismissive wave, opting to try out a saying she'd heard a day earlier. "No sweat," she said. "This is an exciting day, right?" Her voice, both cute and little girlish, because she is a little girl and a bit emotionless, ruined the effect she was going for. Sakura laughed this time and patted Hanabi's head. "Who are you trying to emulate now, Hanabi-chan?" "Shut up." She slapped Sakura's hand away and turned away with a huff, heading towards the door. "Let's just go." Sasuke chuckled and gave a shrug to Neji, Lee and a newly arrived Tenten. "I'll spar with you after this is all over and done with," he said, getting an excited whoop from Lee as he was carried away like a sack of potatoes. Hanabi gave a small laugh of her own and as one the team headed to the door and pushed it open. Complete silence met them, along with the glares of everyone present. Sasuke and Hanabi instantly began a staring contest while Sakura began to look around nervously. Things seemed to be escalating quickly as Sasuke scoffed and killing intent began to radiate. "Sasuke-kun." Whoosh. Bam. Until a purple and yellow blur came out of nowhere and slammed into the Uchiha, materializing into an attractive blonde girl. She was grinning widely with her arms wrapped around him securely. "You're here. I'm so glad," she exclaimed as she nuzzled her cheek into his hair. Sakura was less than pleased. "Get the hell off of him, Ino pig." Ino smirked. Sakura growled while Hanabi sighed and looked away, muttering something about annoying fangirls. "So you guys are here too, huh? How troublesome." A lazy-looking pineapple-headed boy and a chubby boy eating chips arrived. Sasuke, after wresting himself from Ino's persistent grasp, eyed the boys. "Nara, Akimichi," he said in greeting, to which Shikamaru gave a bored half-wave, while Chaoji smiled while still consuming his chips. Then a trio of other presences made themselves known. "Heh. Looks like we're all here. This is gonna rock." He gave Sasuke a smug look. "Think you can handle it, Sasuke?" Uchiha simply crossed his arms. "Can you?" he asked with a superior smirk. Hinata giggled. "Of course we can." "Yeah?" exclaimed Kiba. "This ain't the academy anymore, Uchiha. Better not underestimate us." Sasuke's response was simply to smirk a little more. Until Hanabi jabbed him in the back of the knee. "Oh, knock it off already, it's getting old," she said. "Hey!" yelled Ino. "Who are you to boss Sasuke-kun around, hubrat?" "Shut up, bimbo, it's none of your concern." Ino growled, "Why you little?" Ahem. All 9 pairs of eyes turned to face the maker of the noise and were met with the slightly frowning face of an older boy with round glasses and gray hair. "You guys sure do make a lot of noise. This isn't a playground, you should keep it down a bit." He approached them, trying to look friendly. Kiba was annoyed. "Shut up. No one asked you for your opinion, 4 eyes." The boy seemed to smirk before he gave a non-committal shrug, "Perhaps, but you might want to look around, eh?" The genin from Konoha did. And were met with the snarling visages of the rest of the competitors. The older boy continued to speak. "By acting the way you are, you're making yourselves sound like arrogant noobs, making you all prime targets for attack. Like those 3. He gestured to a trio of especially vicious-looking ninja from the Hidden Rain. "They are known for being quite ruthless and scary, so I would be careful if I were you." "BFFT," began Hanabi of all people, making several glares intensify and focus on her. "The day a bunch of low-life cads such as them intimidate someone like me is the day I quit being a ninja. These weaklings are nothing." "I agree," said Sasuke. "Their killing intent is pathetic. Let them come." "SHH. What are you, stupid? Shut the hell up," yelled Kiba. "It's true though," said Hinata, making her teammate gasp and look at her. "If they can survive a day with Naruto, then they can have something to brag about, until then they can all stuff it and leave us alone." Sakura shuddered. Freaking Naruto. How the hell did she forget about him? There was nothing. Nothing in this room that topped that puppet-using boy in scariness. Nothing. This thought alone made her relax a bit. "Naruto? As in Uzumaki Naruto?" This came from the older boy, and he distinctly became aware of several of the other Konoha teams suddenly turning away looking terrified. Let the rookies brag and talk shit. Ain't no way they were risking getting in the same room as Naruto. Kami bless whoever decided he wasn't participating in the exams. Sasuke shrugged, slightly aware that Ino was still clinging to him, and spoke. "There's only one Naruto in the village, so yeah." The body gave a sheepish laugh and adjusted his glasses. "Well. That certainly is surprising. To think several of his companions would be in these exams. How interesting. It seems your confidence is well earned." He pulled out a deck of cards and sifted through them, ignoring the questioning looks he was getting from the foreign nin and suppressing a huge-ass grin. This was great. He loved shaking people up. He pulled up a card that had Naruto's emotionless mugshot on it and began to read. Uzumaki Naruto, age 13, date of birth, October 10th. His ninjutsu is off the charts, as is his fujutsu, stealth and trap making. His taijutsu is above average, and his kenjutsu is borderline expert level. Ah. I see. He's extremely powerful with the ability to use the puppet technique and is known throughout the village as one of the ones responsible for eliminating Root with the help of Uchiha Sasuke, Hyuga's Hanabi, Hinata and Niji and a boy named Tsuchi, as well as killing Mamachi's Abusa and defeating Yujito Nai, who is the Jinchuriki of the Nibi. Heh. He didn't mention the fact that Naruto was also the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. No need to cause unneeded panic. For now. That and wasn't quite sure if the Sandame's law was still in effect, seeing as how everyone knew what Naruto was. But no sense taking that risk. Holy shit, what? That was the mental reaction of Kankuro. He couldn't keep his jaw from unhinging. A cold bead of sweat dripped down his cheek and he barely suppressed the urge to shake. But he had to ask. Naruto's stone-cold face still plagued his mind as the event from earlier played over and over in his mind again. He spoke. How the hell does he know the puppet technique? That's supposed to be exclusive to Suna. It was true. Suna was going to have a shit fit when they found out. The four-eyed young man looked over at the puppeteer from Suna and smirked a bit wider. Yes, you're right, he began. However, Naruto does indeed know it. How he came to that knowledge is unknown. He smirked wider. I suppose you're going to inform your superior then? Before Kankuro could respond, killing intent rose up. He can try, said Sasuke, his eyes slowly bleeding over into Sharingan. Oh, he can try all day. Yes, began Neji from the back of the room, his own eyes suddenly coming to life. But he will die first. Hanabi said that, all the while, flexing her claws. The redhead's eyes narrowed and his own killing intent began to permeate the air, making several ninjas gasp and turn to him. Naruto's companions instantly zeroed in on him, bodies tensed and ready to act. Settle down, you bunch of maggots. The tension was shattered in an instant by the arrival of the proctor and several other Chunin-level shinobi. The man was a big, intimidating figure with a scarred face and penchant for black clothing. The name's Ibiki, he began. Now sit your asses down or leave. 6969. Naruto, my boy, began Sarutobi with a fond smile. How goes it so far? Uneventful, said the blonde boy with a shrug, Yujito nodding in agreement with her teammate, while Sai simply stared. In that annoyingly creepy fashion that almost guaranteed him no chance with a girl of any kind for the foreseeable future, or so Yujito said to him once. A new village entered though, said Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Called themselves the Hidden Sound. Interesting bunch they were, said Sai. They have extremely excellent awareness. Or hearing. Well, the leader did, far more perceptive than the average genin. He has potential. I see. Anything else? No, said the blonde puppet master, making the third Hokage smile. Thank you there. You are dismissed. Sir. The three saluted and exited the room. You really should do something about that. Boy. Kaharu melted out of the shadows next to Sarutobi, scowling, her face staring at the spot Naruto and his team were at previously. And you are making a mistake by keeping that girl from Kumo here too. Sarutobi looked sideways at his one-time teammate. Something you want, Kaharu? He asked, his voice cold. The old woman shook her head in apparent exasperation. Over the years, Kaharu, while still openly disliking Naruto and never opposed to outright having executed, had lessened up if only a bit. She no longer hated him because of the Kyuubi, she hated him for everything else. It is appalling to her that Sarutobi allows the brat the freedom he has. Naruto is a danger to everyone that needed to be dealt with, but as Hokage, she recognizes that Sarutobi is in charge. You will come to one day regret your action, old friend, she thought. That little monster couldn't be trusted. Your boy forgot to mention, she began sparing a second to sneer and the spot Naruto was one standing. Atsuna has sent their Jinchuriki. What? Kaharu nodded, then melted back into the shadows, her voice a mere whisper. Keep an eye on him. A Jinchuriki has no place in a Chunin exam. Something is up. The third Hokage knew this, and he did vow to keep an eye open. Something was indeed up. 69. Upon stepping outside of the Hokage tower, Naruto was promptly ambushed by Konohamaru. Well, almost ambushed. The whip-like tail wrapped around Naruto's waist, reacted as if it were organic, and slapped the boy upside the head, making him flip sideways and land on his head. Ow. Jerk. What the heck was that for geez? Massaging the sizable lump on his head, Konohamaru glared at his sensei in indignation. Naruto merely crossed his arms. Did you clean up that mess? He asked. It took a second for Konohamaru to get it, but then images of his little fight with Hanabi came rushing back. He blushed in anger, or something else. Naruto couldn't tell nor did he care to tell. Yeah, I got it cleaned up. Was way easy too. Chakra strings are amazing. Humph. Without any more than that, Naruto began to stroll off. Yujito clinging possessively to his left arm while Sai was either taking notes or drawing a picture. Whatever it was making Naruto look annoyed and Yujito giggle like a little girl. Kami, they are weird, muttered Konohamaru. He meant Naruto's teammates, of course. Naruto-sensei himself was friggin' awesome. No one could deny that. Hey wait. He yelled, suddenly taking off after the blonde. I need more training, damn it. None of them noticed, either because they were too distracted with distracting each other or just merely didn't care too much, the dark-skinned man with wide almost afro-style hair. Why Yujito? Berry-san. Turning toward the woman who spoke, the man gave her an astonished look. Mabui. I think I saw Yujito Dono. What? Yeah. But wasn't she sent on a suicide mission never to return? That's what the old geezer said. Mabui grabbed Darui's wrist and began to drag him to the Hokage tower. Come on, she muttered. We have an appointment to keep. Darui couldn't stop thinking about her. About Yujito and the unjust way she was treated. How most people in the village were treated. AB. You're not going to believe this, he muttered. Hopefully the Hokage would listen to them long enough to accomplish what they came here for. Thank you for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see the next part, don't forget to turn on notifications by hitting that bell icon. Please like, subscribe, and comment below to let me know your thoughts. Check out my other videos for more content you might enjoy. Until next time, take care.